we've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you, you wonderful, discerning patriots, you gorgeous creatures, you acolytes of the station of common sense. Well done for tuning in. This is Alex Phillips. I'm going to be with you until 1 o'clock today, and there is so much to talk about. There really is. You know, normally the thing is on a Friday is Parliament doesn't really do much. MPs have gone back to their constituents. All those people who are only in the office Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, yes, we know the acronym, are sitting there under their slankets or sunbathing in the garden this time of year, not really doing much, and it's normally a bit of a sleepy news day. You come into work and you're like, oh gosh, it's the same old stories as yesterday. Here we go again. Let's just sort of spice things up by throwing a shed load of opinions into the mix. But oh no, not today. You can tell when a government is in trouble. You can tell when there's been a huge distraction because your Chancellor has been sobbing on the green benches. You can tell when there's speculation over the leadership of the Prime Minister and what sort of rebellion is going to come from the back benches. You can tell when a government's back is against the ropes, because there's one thing that they do, and that is in panic and desperation, they dump a whole load of new policies into the pages of the press and say, go on then, talk about that. This is reset, this is rebirth, this is reinvigoration. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. And so, dear listeners, that is what we're going to do today. We're going to take all of these policies, the dump of disaster is what I might call it, and go over the lot of it and see how much further this Labour government can decimate our truly once wonderful nation. Because believe you me, they've got a lot lined up for us. And it's about time we discussed what it was going to do. So that is what we're up to today. And as we hurtle through the pinball machine of policy mayhem, feel free to throw in your own 2 bits. Have a go. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial if you would like to join the circus. That is charged at your normal network rate. You can also use that number, of course, to send me a WhatsApp message or indeed leave me a little voice note on WhatsApp. You know I love them. I say it every time. I can then play play your dulcet tones out on the national airwaves, and you don't even have to lift a finger once you've pinged it over. Just keep it clean, because I'd like to keep my job. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message instead. If you're going to be old school about it, there are specific instructions attached, which are thus: you must write the word talk before you write your message. We're also on X at talkTV, where you can tweet us to oblivion. And yeah, there you go. Let's get on, shall we? Because I am joined by the number one babber, the Gert Lush, James Price, former Conservative government advisor. Good morning to you, James.
All right, my lover. How are you?
All right, my love. Right, where we go. I'm all right. The country's not. Sir Keir Starmer's not really, is he? It's not much of a happy first birthday in power to him, is it? I mean, what would be your sort of top highlights of the disaster that has been our first Labour government in 3 terms?
Gosh, there's a lot to choose from, isn't there? I mean, today is over in America, Independence Day, and I'm wishing and waiting for the day that we get our own independence from Keir Starmer. And the man doesn't believe in anything. This is part of the problem. He said in interviews he doesn't dream. He said he doesn't have a favourite book, right? He's just a non-person. There's nothing there. And the country is suffering as a result, because we can't work out what it is, what direction they're trying to take us in, what it is they actually want to do. And you asked me for my highlights or maybe my lowlights. The only things I can think of are putting up taxes, destroying family farms, destroying our education system as best they possibly can, mad eco-lunacy, which I'm sure we'll touch on a bit later on, giving away British territory, killing granny, killing babies. You know, what how much worse could it get? I'm almost lost for words when I try and think about the year that we've had and how much we've suffered. And remember, 4 long years still to try and survive it.
You forgot my highlight of the lot of it, which was throwing innocent people in prison for being alleged far-right activists. That was one of the top ones, James. Come on. But it is, I mean, it's been a tough initiation, let's say, and you're absolutely right about Sir Keir Starmer. You kind of wonder what his ideology is. So what do you make of the fact that there'd been blood in the water? The backbenchers decided that now was the time to go for the jugular and attack, and this was over the much-needed welfare reform, because we simply cannot keep dragging around such a debt-to-GDP ratio, such a huge welfare burden on those of us who do go to work and pay our taxes. Of course, that was defeated. We're now going to end up spending about $1 billion plus extra instead of saving $4 to $5 billion. And in the wake of all of this, you've got Zara Sultana, who was booted out the party anyway for not opposing the government's cap on the two-child benefits, but putting in legislation to lift it and backing it. She was had the whip removed right at the offset when Starmer thought he has a big enough majority to teach people a lesson if they're going to be defiant and not go along with his government's agenda. And so she said, look, this time I'm actually going to leave. I'm an independent as such, sitting there because the Labour whip's been removed. I'm going to start a brand new party with Magic Grandpa himself, Jeremy Corbyn, who apparently was down the allotment, tending to his marrows and had no idea that this was going to be announced. What is your take of this? Because, my feeling is, in a way, I'm like, yes, good. And I'll tell you why I think it's good. My worry is if there are so many hard leftists sitting on those backbenches going after Sir Keir Starmer, he's going to be dragged more and more and more into the socialist quagmire, which is going to decimate the nation's economy. At least if they go form their own little entity, he might feel like the seagull has been sort of removed from around his neck.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was talking to a Labour MP yesterday. One or two of them still will talk to me, even though they know that I think that their whole ideology is cancerous. And they were saying that this was a good thing as well, because it will enable them perhaps to actually get some stuff done. Unfortunately, the kind of hardcore communist cranks, of which Zara Sultana is one, and the Magic Grandpa, Jeremy Corbyn himself, is another. They're one bit of the problem, but all the other rebels, who stopped this welfare bill from going ahead, they're not all hardcore like that. They just haven't got a Scooby about how the rest of the country works or how the economy works, and they just wanted to be seen as, quote, being nice people. So I think the rot runs a lot deeper through the Labour Party than just these hardcore nutters. But it will be fun to watch these people moving off and attacking Labour from the left. Hopefully it will cause Labour more electoral damage come the next election as well, which will be good news for the Conservatives and for the Reform Party too. And we'll hear them come out with some truly lunatic stuff. There's this commie crank in New York City who's talking about nationalising all the corner shops there. And Steve about that happening here. And Zara Sultana, just absolute classic. She was elected at the age of about 24, I think. She's never had a real job. She's never done anything. She doesn't know anything about how the world works. And yet she's going to prognosticate and sit on a high horse and tell people how to run the economy when she's never even had a job. I can't wait to see what she comes up with.
I can't wait either. Simon in Sevenoaks has said, morning, Alex. The new party formed by Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana should be called the Fruit and Nut Party. I love that. Playing on Sultana, I'm sure, as well. Very good, Simon. We like that a lot. Let's talk about, though, I was saying in my intro there that it's a sort of typical trope of government that when things get a little bit sticky, when you've had a lot of bad press, you try and sort of usher it into the lesser pages by some big, heavy-hitting announcements. And the Labour Party have certainly got out of the traps this morning with some brand new, fresh ideas that they're going to roll out into potential statutes. Let's begin with the NHS app, which where streeting is going to launch. I don't know how long this is going to take to make. I mean, we went through this in COVID, and Matt Hancock wanted to be sort of, .com digital home office health secretary. But do you welcome this announcement that you can have a doctor in your pocket? You can have essentially same-day GP appointments by modernising the system, by basically having an app which is going to pull together your medical records and then use artificial intelligence to triage cases, give advice, determine when someone will need an in-face appointment, potentially sort of streamline the system of making sure people who need prescriptions can get prescriptions, and detect early warning signs that might sort of suggest that someone needs to focus on a particular element of their lifestyle or go and get something checked out. What do you think of this?
I think in principle, it's actually a great idea. We all know that the NHS is abysmally run. We all know that it's basically impossible to get a regular GP appointment. You've got to be there, sat on your phone at 7:59 in the morning, and you call the second that the clock hits 8 o'clock, and you find out you're 809th in the queue already. And, oh, I'm sorry, all the appointments are gone. Try again tomorrow. Meanwhile, your foot is falling off or something. So I think in principle, it's a good idea. Of course, lots of companies, private companies like Bupa, have been doing this for a long time already, and actually some other sort of app providers who connect you to GPs have been doing this for a long time already, and they'll be doing it much, much better than the NHS possibly can, because unfortunately the NHS doesn't do anything very well. So it may be slightly a heretical take, but I just think if we could have more private competition coming into the healthcare system, not charging people, not saying, if you've not got any money, you're going to die, like in the American system, which isn't how the system works, by the way, but that's what everybody thinks. I think that we should have whatever works. And we don't hear about the systems in Europe, for example, where there's a kind of social and health insurance model. If you can't afford the insurance, obviously the state will pay and pay for you. So it's still free at the point of use, but we have a better level of provision coming through because there's competition, there's innovation like this. And I think that would be a better way to do it than just relying on the NHS, which, remember, is the number one user of fax machines and pagers still in the world, because it's that hopelessly outdated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I fully support the concept of this app. I think digitisation should have happened a long time ago. I find it quite remarkable that in 2025, someone's only just coming up with an NHS app now, and it's going to take a gazillion years to build. And I think actually using AI to look at medical records is a very sensible thing to do. Lots of people, I don't want my data being looked at. I'm like, if it's going to, save me from having a late cancer diagnosis, I don't care. You dig into those medical files, robot creature. But what I do worry about with this is there's been a huge emphasis on the lifestyle element of it, as in terms of the app will be a personal health coach guiding people at risk with tailored advice and timely reminders. We won't just wait for problems, we'll see them coming, which to me sounds a little bit like the social credit system that the Chinese Communist Party like, which is, oh, well, you bought too many fat foods this weekend in the supermarket, we're going to tax you that bit extra. I don't mind the idea of streamlining the health system. I don't mind my medical records being analysed by, brains in computers far bigger than mine or that of an overweight GP who gives rubbish advice. But I do mind this idea that there's going to be not so much a pocket doctor, but a pocket nanny state.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the right way to think about it. The new technology is great. The idea behind some of this stuff is great. But if it is a little message that goes ping on your phone and it's Wes Streeting, the health secretary, saying, oi, put down that chocolate bar, I don't think that is going to be a wonderful future for us. And bear in mind how the NHS is on its knees. It's being made worse all the time by the Labour Party, obviously. But it's now trying to focus on getting shops supermarkets like Tesco or Asda or whatever to get you to eat less sugar themselves. Again, just madness. Just focus on what actually matters. I was going to say focus on bread and butter, but they'll probably ban that as well. And so, as you say, the threat of the nanny state coming in and telling you how to do is a real problem. Most people by now know that if you stuff your face full of donuts and chocolate bars and Coca-Cola all day long, it's going to be bad for you. And if you go for a run and eat a piece of fruit, it's less bad. We all know that. So instead of this kind of nanny statism that is going to reduce our freedom and take away our rights, because unlike people in the Labour Party, for most people, going out and having a nice fancy dinner is a rare treat, and therefore they shouldn't be made to feel bad about it. Instead, let's do exciting, cool new technologies, maybe a bit like this one, but certainly in the kind of medical technology and medicine space. You've heard about these Ozempic jabs. They are the first stage of this kind of weight loss drug. There'll be even better ones coming along, but that will massively, massively help people. Of course, the left doesn't like that, because what they actually want to do is just attack the big businesses that produce these products.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm slightly sceptical about the sort of mass rollout of weight loss jabs, because every time I open the newspaper, I'm learning of more and more side effects and things that could go a bit awry. And I do wonder, whether or not in the future we may pay the price if we don't actually understand fully the effect it has on the body. There still seems to be learning about these things. But what about this? You talked about using sort of, shop technology, modern platforms, digitising things. The Home Secretary is now encouraging various stores on the high street to use a new crime reporting platform. Again, it sounds like a good idea. Live facial recognition cameras, a lot of self-checkouts have these, although I'm not sure, how useful this is going to be in the long run. But apparently 10% of offenders account for 72% of shoplifting offences. Most of it's done by gangs. Most of it's done to order, to take your meat over to a local takeaway seller at the back door, or load up a van with luxury products and take it out to some newfangled restaurant over in the Balkans. But to me, this is a very good idea. Yes, we can get the data on people doing shoplifting. By and large, I think a lot of organisations probably already have that with CCTV. But the difficulty to me is sort of further along in the justice system, where these people don't end up going to court for about 2 years. And when they get there, some lefty judge goes, well, cost of living crisis, don't you worry. You've only committed a crime 162 times. We'll let you go for now. Maybe you've learnt your lesson.
Alex, as ever, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think there's a big problem with that. I think there's a big problem with short sentences, with overly lenient sentences, because what would actually fix the problem of shoplifting, and mostly all other crimes as well, is very, very simple. Someone commits a crime, you lock them up. And you lock them up for quite a long time, actually, because the number one point of prison should be keeping the rest of us who just want to live our lives, raise our families, build our businesses, go to work, enjoy a nice day out, whatever it is. We just want to be able to do that without the scum of the earth coming and getting in the way. And as you say, there is this mad fact that a very, very small percentage of people are responsible for the overwhelming majority of crimes. And so if we just take those people and lock them up, I don't care anymore that this country is so unsafe now. London in particular is so unsafe. I just don't want to have to live around these people anymore. If we just lock them up, we would have to worry about all of these things. But until then, I suppose if we're going to be reporting extra crimes, most people, of course, don't now report lots of crimes, or many people don't report crimes, because they think, well, what's the bloody point? All the police are interested in is locking you up if you say something mean on Facebook or something like that. But it would be very interesting if we start getting more data about who is committing these crimes, because it turns out that an Albanian in the UK is many, 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 many times more likely to commit a crime than your average Brit. And that's true for lots of other nationalities as well. And I think we should start getting to a point where if someone's applying for a visa from one of these countries, I'm sorry, the risk is just too high. We don't want you here. We've already got enough problems as it is. And I think we should start being a lot more selective about who we have into the country as well.
Aha, that segues me nicely onto the next topic. Well done, James. You're a bit of a sort of foreteller of fate at the moment, because the next story I wanted to talk about was tackling the problem that we found out that the Home Office is just not conducting basic exit checks. They're not actually recording when people have gone home. They're not using passenger data to report back, airlines and airports, this is, to report back to the Home Office who's here and who isn't. who's overstayed their welcome, who's not left the country. I mean, this is shockingly, shockingly dangerous. They're talking about rolling out technology in the health service to counteract shop crimes, shoplifting and all the rest of it. But what about this? We've got the technology, we've got the way to record this data, and it's not being done. And now we're in a situation where Lord knows who's still living in Britain, who hasn't left, who should have left, what their records are and what they plan to get up to.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying, isn't it? And that's, of course, on top of the fact that we've got tens of thousands of fighting-age males just coming over willy-nilly on boats, and we know that there are increasing numbers of ISIS members and God knows what else coming over in there as well. And even if they're not active terrorists, but certainly we've got to know who these people are, where they're at the very least, even if they were all Geoffrey Chaucer and William Shakespeare or whatever, right? We would need to know these things because you need to know how many school places to have, how many hospital beds to prepare for, how many houses should be built every year, things like that. So we're not even getting the basic stuff done, let alone the fact that these people then come over, they disappear off, and we've got no idea where they are, what they're doing. People who are watching here can see shots of these people who go and work for Deliveroo and other kind of food delivery people who they do it, they take someone else's account, they pretend to be someone else. You know, you order yourself a McDonald's, whatever it is, delivery, someone will come along and it'll say, oh, Valerie's coming. And actually it's some big 7-foot bloke who doesn't look much like a Valerie coming along. And the problem with this is that, and I never thought I'd say this myself, I'm almost getting sympathetic to the arguments around something like an ID card, a digital ID card or identity card, just because that would actually make it easier to stop these sorts of scumbags from coming in and doing goodness knows what. And unfortunately, we have got ourselves into such a pickle as a country that we're going to have to start looking at what people might deem quite illiberal mechanisms in order to get it sorted. And we've seen how that's already working really well in America, where they're finally getting to grips with their own problem of how many foreign asylum seekers or terrorists or whoever it may be have been flooding into their country. We're going to have to do that as well now, and it's not going to be very nice when it comes to it, but it is, I'm afraid, better than the alternative of, as you say, having tens of thousands of these people, hundreds of thousands, millions of these people running around the country willy-nilly and us not knowing who they are, what they're up to, where they're from and what they're going to do next.
What do you make of the big release from Ed Zero today? The attack of the Wimwoms. He's undoing the 9-year block on onshore wind farms and wants to have a revolution in wind technology sector. He says it's going to. It could. You know, they do this, don't they? This could create 45,000 jobs, which means it won't. This idea that, you know, this is going to shore up the grid, it's going to bring down costs of energy, that this is great for the country, it's for the birds. I hate Wimwoms, and I hate Wimwoms on our green and pleasant land. Most of the time, the things don't even spin. They take more baseload energy to make sure they don't turn into decaying rust buckets. They churn up migratory flocks. Frankly, they're really expensive to build. There's far better technology out there. All other countries in the world get the contracts to manufacture them, not us. They destroy arable land and they make, you know, the rolling hills look like a junkyard. And yet here he is, old Ed Zero, his brother, of course, deeply into the renewables industry. You wonder how much the Miliband's are set to make from such initiatives themselves. I mean, there was a reason why the Conservative Party blocked planning applications to build onshore wind farms, and they were good reasons indeed. But good old Ed Zero, because he's obsessed, because he's a zealot for climate change. Basically, to save the economy, you just need to take that guy out, don't you, frankly speaking? Here it is. This is the latest chapter in what I'm going to do with my massive budget that shouldn't exist. I'm going to destroy nature with windmills.
Yeah, I definitely think it's true that the Labour Party, just in general, and probably Miliband in particular, have absolutely no love for the great British countryside, and they don't feel instinctively. You know, you and I, Alex, we joke about how we're from Gloucester, and Gloucestershire is some of the most beautiful countryside in the world, and you walk along our green and pleasant land, and you feel a deep connection to England, right? You feel a connection to or Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland. You feel it literally in the soil, in the trees. You feel it actually when the wind blows, and you feel a deep love and connection and a feeling that we should be good custodians of the land and make it healthier and better and more vibrant and pass on an even more green and pleasant land to the next generation. Ed Miliband doesn't feel that at all, right? You see him right here wearing a hard hat, looking like a complete wally. The man's never probably lifted a hammer or a saw or anything a day in his life, but he doesn't get it, and therefore he's happy to do this. I don't particularly have a problem with some of the aesthetics about windmills, actually. Maybe I'm like Don Quixote and will keep tilting at windmills all the time. But I do think that you're right about the supply chain problem, about the decaying nature of them. And it's just, I think, frankly, a major distraction from what we should be doing, which is going all in on nuclear technology and next generation nuclear. If you can shrink down a nuclear engine to fit on a submarine that can go submerge all around the world and stay down there for ages and all these wonderful things, you can shrink it down to be in every village in the land, and you can have great baseload, clean, limitless energy. And we need that for our economy to get going. And whilst we do that, when some other clever cookie comes up with fusion technology or something marvelous, but we shouldn't be destroying, as you say, our green and pleasant land and killing birds just to satisfy Ed Miliband's mad ideas.
Yeah, I just get the impression that, windmills are a bit like CDs. They're yesterday's technology. They sort of aren't stable enough to really help the grid. If we become too reliant on renewables, what happens is we get these surges when there's a very sunny or a very windy day, then it all goes dead. And so you're going to need other, versions of energy generation to regulate that grid, lest we become Spain and the lights go out. I actually had dinner last night speaking to a fascinating man who did a big report for Gordon Brown and said to him, if you pursue this renewable stuff, you're going to be having blackouts by 2025. And I said to him, what do you make of this, right? What do you make of the energy policy? Are there actually going to be blackouts? And he just looked at me, threw his head back and laughed, which I took to mean, yeah, brace yourself.
Terrifying, isn't it? We're already seeing it, as you say, in Spain. We got very, very close last winter to this, and when I worked in the cabinet office, this was one of the major scares that people had. If you lose a few of these different bits and bobs, if some of the liquid natural gas entry points go down, and a few other problems. Let's remember, of course, there's a huge amount of oil and gas still in the North Sea that we're not allowed to use because of mad rules. There's a huge amount of fracking potential we could use to bring people's bills down, and we're not doing it because of, frankly, what I think to be, and I think has been proven at times to be, Kremlin-funded propaganda attacking things like fracking and our oil and gas. Of course, we still buy the oil and gas from the Norwegians, who are taking it from the next door bit of the North Sea and paying them and making them rich as a result, which is completely crackers as well. And I think this is getting to a point where it is a national security issue, because if the lights start going out, then people in hospitals are going to die, people are going to be even more the victims of crime, and we're going to be more receptive to even more terrorist attacks and things like that. I think it's really, really serious. And when, of course, you go and look at the United States of America, they are the world's biggest energy exporter now, largely through the shale gas or the fracking revolution, perfectly safe over there. And their energy bills are, 60-something% cheaper than ours, which means they can have all the air conditioning on hot, sunny days that they want, and they're much, much richer as a result. And we're not doing this. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. And I blame Ed Miliband, and I blame all the other mad eco-zealots who think that they're doing a nice thing for the environment some hundreds of years into the future. But at the moment, you've got either Granny dying of cold in the winter or all sorts of other problems happening because he's not going to be able to keep the lights on.
Oh, I agree. The highest energy bills in the world. They're all sort of scrabbling around, figuring out how to sort of fill up this constant black hole that they keep making because they won't cut the welfare state, they won't make any efficiency savings. Instead, they just pay and pay and pay. And I'm there going, do you know what? Just get rid of the Department of Net Zero. Get rid of Ed Miliband and his budget. Get rid of all these mad schemes that are actually going to make things worse, and you're going to make a massive saving. James, thank you ever so much. Always great to catch up with you. Like I said, number one babber in the world. He's Gertlush. Right now, would you like to share your thoughts on what we've been talking about? Because after the break, that is what we're going to do. I've already got two people lined up, got Lawrence and Chris waiting on the line if you want to be like them and have a chit chat with me about the stories we're talking about today. The number is 0344 499 1000. It is at your normal network rate, which means it costs the same amount to speak to me as it does to, well, do anything really, apart from phoning a premium line, which will cost you, but we don't. We're free. And the lovely James, aka Oxford, is poised, ready to take your call and make sure you are not balmy. We don't mind a bit of balminess, though. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you do that, you've got to write the word talk before you hit the send button and send your message to me. 0344 499 1000, also the number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp, because I do like playing those out. OK, taking a little breather now, but when I come back, as promised, we're going to be hitting up the phone lines and chatting to you guys after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Lots of messages, lots of calls to take. But first of all, I'm going to read out a message that I've received personally on my own mobile phone at my personal number because my former work husband, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, is tuned in. And he quite liked the idea that Zara Sultana's new political party with Jeremy Corbyn could be called the Fruit and Nut Party, but he's got a better moniker. That's right. He says... He says, fruit and nut, no. The new pro-Palestine Looney Tunes outfit should be called, get this, Jezbollah. That's good. Kev, that's very good. I love that. There you go. If you have my personal number, look at that. You skip the queue. Right, let's read some other messages now. People talking about the NHS app. Neil says it's a great idea until it gets hacked. Someone else says the NHS app plus facial recognition. How long before I go to Tesco? And it won't let me scan more than my daily calorie allowance. That's from Jeff in Sussex. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm worried about, actually. The idea that this could sort of soon tilt into a sort of social credits programme. Another Alex from Solihull says that I've been using the NHS app for 3 years. It's on version 5.1.3. I can reorder prescriptions, contacted the doctor's practice with photos and see test results and notes. It already works very well. Is that so? My doctor's surgery have got like a sort of online thing where you can, you know, ask for an appointment and send photos. I did that once because I had a weird lump in my neck. They didn't care. Could be dead by now. I think it was just a gland that was being a miscreant. But there you go. Didn't work for me so good. Right, let's do some voice notes quickly now. This is Matt.
Morning, Alex. Just a quick one. Everywhere I go now, I see wind farms or solar farms and all this net zero malarkey. I thought it was meant to bring the prices of energy down. I don't see that in my bills. When's it going to start coming down? Or is it all a load of...
I love that. Yeah, it's probably all a load of... Exactly, because yeah, we have the highest bills in the world because, of course, these things cost money. Who's paying for it? And actually, in Ed Zero's little press release on this, the 45,000 jobs it's going to create, it won't. He talks about community funding of something like £40 million. Community funding? How is community funding different from the private investment, which is also apparently it's going to attract? Well, community funding means us. We pay for it. See, we are the community. Let's have a listen to Kelvin.
Taxpayers buying all these solar panels and wind turbines, and he's just going to have them dotted all around the country and making it look an eyesore, which it will do. Does that mean we get free electricity if we're paying for them, or have we got paid the electric bills and everything as well on top? And if we are, is it his company that's going to make the profits and have all the profits? Because that's how it sounds and that's how it looks. It sounds like a really big Labour scam. Well, the last time they rolled out a lot of onshore wind farms, Kelvin, they were sort of paying people tasty little morsels of income for having a wind turbine on their land. People like the National Trust did very well out of it, and I think it was David Cameron's father-in-law made a bob or two out of having land upon which these turbines could be built. So it seems a bit reverse Robin Hood to me. They pay the big landowners money to put these windworms on, and then where are they getting that from? Granny's energy bill, us, the green levies. So I do think it actually moves capital in totally the wrong direction. That's my own personal viewpoint. Let's speak now to Lawrence from Colchester. Good morning, Lawrence. What is on your mind? What would you like to talk about?
Hello, Alex. You have to excuse me, darling. I'm just so depressed every morning. You get out of bed and I listen to Mike, and all you hear is preferential treatment with bloody illegal immigrants. I am sick to death of it, and everybody I talk to, including lefties, let me tell you, I really, really had enough of it. I mean, live and let live is my motto, but surely charity belongs at home first, and you look after your own people. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
We don't know who these people are that are coming into the country illegally, and I don't care that they're seeking asylum. That's a load of old flannel.
Oh, it is. You know what? I put something on X the other day, and it sort of went a bit viral because people sort of read it and went, oh yeah, I get it now. I said, you know, someone said to me, pay me £5,000 and I will get you onto a beach in Lanzarote. When you land on that beach, you're going to be given a 4-star hotel, full board, for free. You'll be given some pocket money every week. We're going to give you a free phone while you're there because you're not going to have to work. We might throw in some activities to keep you entertained. And you can live on Lanzarote, all expenses paid for a year, 2 years, and then we might decide if you can then stay there. I would pay the £5,000. I'd be gone. Why wouldn't I? And you think that there's all these men living in, you know, grim countries where there are no jobs, where women are dressed like ghosts, where they can't go out on a bender on a Saturday night. And the people traffickers are swamping social media going, oh, look, you know, you can do this, pay that, come here, get this hotel, look at this person working for delivery, all the cash money, look at us on Bournemouth Beach, ooh, look at all these girls in bikinis, isn't this much better than in Sudan? So of course they're going to come. It is a madness. When you put it like that, if someone offered you, if someone offered my producer Dean, if someone offered my protege, mini Alex Ellie, who is with me today learning the ropes of the trade, the opportunity to go stay in a nice hotel full board somewhere else when you don't like your own country, you're going to take it, aren't you? I mean, you put it in those terms, you suddenly go, oh yeah, this is really mad. Well, of course it is. And you're right about not knowing who these people are, because what sticks in my craw, what sickens me to the stomach, is the people who are going to perpetrate the next big terror attack in this country, who are going to kill our children, are probably right now being paid by the taxpayer to have a nice old life in a travel lodge. And that is the bit that disgusts me more than anything. That was Lawrence in Colchester. Thank you ever so much. OK, the number's on your screen if you want to speak to me later on in the programme. 03444991000 is the number to call. You can call that number at any point and James will take your call. Write down your number and give you a call back next time we hit up the phone lines. It's your normal network rate. You can use that number as well to send me a WhatsApp message or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. We'll play as many as we can throughout the programme. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text instead. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before your message. We're on X at talkTV. I'm going to take a breather now, enjoy my cup of tea, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking to a leading pollster about what is going on in the political landscape.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. there, welcome back to the show. We've had a lively first 40 minutes, haven't we? Because let's face it, politics is a pretty interesting game and has been for quite a while now. Shifting sands indeed, looking at the political landscape. I never really thought I would ever say this, but it does look as though if there were a general election called tomorrow, Nigel Farage is on course to become the next Prime Minister. Now, I'm somebody who started working with Nigel back in 2007. Almost 20 years of my life. And while I always hoped through those endeavours that we might see a massive revolution in politics, you never really think it's going to happen. You think the first past the post system is so entrenched and the sort of legacy two-party politics is so much of our heritage that getting any sort of breakthrough that could change things is for the birds. Well, looking at these polls at the moment, this was courtesy of YouGov. You've got Reform UK on 271 seats. Projected seats. The Labour Party on 178, the Lib Dems on 81, the Conservatives on 46. And that's not a bad outing for the Conservatives at 46, because I've seen some polls projecting seats, putting them on, well, 10. But there you would have, essentially, a pretty healthy Reform UK majority. Is it going to stay that way? Is this a protest vote? What is all of this based on? Is it policies? Is it the want for radical change? Can the Conservatives claw it back? Can the Labour Party have a resurgence? Or might this now be a trend that's become so baked in, we can predict that is what it will be come 2029? Well, let's speak to someone who might have answers to those questions in the form of Joe Twyman, who is the founder of Delta Poll. Good morning to you, Joe.
Good morning, Alex.
Now, I've heard a lot of people in the Legacy Party say, well, you know, it's just reform, it's a protest vote, nothing to see here. When it comes to the crunch, Nigel Farage isn't serious, people will go back to voting how they always have. And I'm there going, I'm not sure. This seems like an established pattern, and it might be a protest vote, but I think it's rooted in policies that I don't think at any point over the next 4 years are going to be addressed by the Labour Party. I don't think they're going to be able to massively reduce inward migration, particularly illegal migration. I don't think they are going to be able to combat the cost of living. I think, if anything, it's going to get worse. And so I wonder whether the needle will actually move by 2029. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a long time to go until the next election. I think that's the most important thing to say. As pollsters, we ask if there were a general election tomorrow, but we know there's not a general election tomorrow. And even in the situation at the moment, the Reform UK would be on for 271 seats, and that is well short of the 326 that you need for a majority. So it's not a majority as things stand at the moment. But over those 4 years, things could change for any of the parties. And if anything has taught, if we've been taught anything from the last 15 years of British politics, is that nothing can be ruled out. But I do think it's early days. During the 1980s, for instance, during the early 1980s, the SDP were on more than 50%, 50% in the polls at one point, and by 1983 they had completely collapsed. The challenge for new parties is still there. Now, you could argue, quite rightly, that Reform UK are not a new party in the same sense the SDP were. But that doesn't mean they still don't face the same issues that a new party does when it comes to actually performing on the ground. And one thing that MRP surveys, such as the one that produced the figures you quoted, one of the things they can't do is take account of hyper-local factors. So there's still a lot to play. But having said all of that, the first year of this Parliament has been characterised by a rise in reform. They have led in all of the polls for May and June now, and so they are definitely the success story of this Parliament, while Labour have fallen back. But will the long-term trends continue? As I say, we just don't know.
In terms of popularity, today, of course, is the first birthday of the Labour government. I don't know if they're going to be lighting candles, gorging themselves on cake and popping the Prosecco just yet, because it seems to me their popularity ratings are pretty dismal compared to previous Prime Ministers after 1 year in power. How is Starmer looking?
He's historically one of the lowest performing prime ministers that we have ever had, which is clearly bad news. Compared to Tony Blair, for instance, he's doing extraordinarily badly. But the situation that Tony Blair inherited from the Conservatives in 1997 is completely different from the situation, particularly regarding the economy, that Keir Starmer inherited from the Conservatives in 2024. So it is a very different situation. But having said that, no Prime Minister of any party wants to be in the kind of poll ratings that we're seeing for Keir Starmer at the moment. Only around a quarter of people say that he's doing a good job, while around about 2/3 say he's doing badly. So that's not a great position to be in. Having said all of that, none of the party leaders are doing particularly well at the moment. Nigel Farage tends to poll best, but he also has the largest proportion of people saying they don't like him. So it's a complicated public opinion picture across the political spectrum at the moment.
Picking up what you said about people who are opposed to Nigel Farage as a sort of Marmite character, could a successful move by the left wing be to all get together and do a sort of vote for us to keep reform out? Do they have the firepower, if they conjoined as a force, to do that? That's what we've seen in other nations where legacy parties have tried to crowd out the populist vote, which is essentially creating coalitions trying to block that from happening. Do you think that could be a manoeuvre that the left-wing parties could take? Have they got enough amongst their number if they could coordinate to do that?
Well, I think some sort of formal arrangement is very, very unlikely, at least before a general election result itself. If that general election result produced a minority, as the poll suggested it would if one were to occur today, then perhaps we would see something more official. But going into an election, what I imagine we'll see is that in certain constituencies, one of the anti-reform parties, and I would include the Conservatives in that, might take their foot off the gas a bit in particular constituencies if they know that there will be a quid pro quo in other constituencies more favourable to their party. But this is all speculation. It's certainly the case that Reform are doing well at the moment, and the parties will look to respond to that. But I think certainly the Labour government, before it thinks about any kind of coalition, informal or formal, with other parties, what it will want to do is improve its own position in the polls. And at the heart of that will be an improvement to the economic circumstances in this country. That will be what Labour will be concentrating on over the next 4 years.
We've seen in recent times the launch of lots of new mini parties. It seems that bored businessmen don't go and play golf anymore. They set up political entities, and disgruntled Labour politicians, rather than just sitting on the back benches and taking Pilates lessons, also want to make new parties. How much of an impact could new smaller entities have on a forthcoming election?
Well, you can ask people in the abstract construct of a survey instrument how they would vote, how they would hypothetically vote in a hypothetical election for a hypothetical party. And you usually get around 10% of people saying they would vote for them. It doesn't matter what that party's position is or not. What you're asking them is who they would vote for. What they're actually answering is how they feel about mainstream parties and the parties that exist at the moment. And they project their own hopes onto this new party. But the reality, and I say this as the official pollster of Change UK, is that it's far more difficult than that. And new parties do tend to struggle. And indeed, we only have to look at the history of Reform and indeed the Brexit Party and indeed UKIP to see how over a number of years they really did struggle, and it's only now they're starting to have a consistent lead in the polls.
Yeah, like 30, 35 years in it, that's always what I say. This idea you can set up a party and it just works from the get-go, especially under first past the post, which leads me to my final question, which is, if in a few years' time the Labour Party are looking at the landscape and saying, we're not going to stay in power with the way things are at the moment, with the seat projections, might they be tempted to pull a rabbit out of a hat and change the parameters of our franchise? Might they be tempted to give votes to 16-year-olds? Might they be tempted to introduce PR in order to make sure that there is essentially a sort of, left-wing monopoly going on into the future? Would that work out for them? Or if we did change our voting system, give 16-year-olds the vote and get rid of first past the post, could that actually play into the hands of Reform?
There's no evidence to suggest that it would necessarily overwhelmingly help Labour. The interesting thing about first past the post is that it holds parties back up until a certain point and then suddenly massively benefits them. We saw that with the SNP in Scotland in successive elections, and we saw it reversed in 2024. I think it's extraordinarily difficult to play out how that would affect things in a 2029 election, assuming that does take place. I think expanding the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds, that may be something that they look at. But in all cases, I think actually doing that before the next election is unlikely. likely, I would say. But who knows? Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, what sort of government would change the way that voting works to make sure they can stay in power? That never happens, Joe. Brilliant catching up with you. The brilliant Joe Twyman there, founder of Delta Poll. We're going to go to a short break now, but when I come back, we're going to be live from Anfield Stadium talking about that tragic death of Diogo Jota. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello and welcome back. Let's cross straight now to Amelia Beltrao, who is at Anfield, because Liverpool today mourning the tragic deaths of their forward Diogo Jota and his brother Andre Silva, which happened on Thursday. The pair were involved in a car crash in Spain. Let's get the latest. Good morning, Amelia.
Good morning, Alex.
I mean, a tragic news today for, well, the world of football, frankly. What's the reaction been like in Anfield? I can see all the tributes there behind you. Scores of flowers, it seems, have been laid by the stadium.
Yeah, hundreds of bouquets of flowers here behind me, a sea of red scarves and shirts, as well as balloons, and not just Liverpool shirts, but football shirts of various different clubs, Wolves, Everton, just to kind of give a sense that it's not just the football community that's grieving, it's all of people of Merseyside are grieving, as well as across the world. And although it's not as the feeling today is slightly less sombre and emotional, yesterday's scenes were, you really did feel the impact of how raw it all felt. You came into the premises of Anfield and you really did get hit by how emotional it all felt. It was almost like an atmosphere just shifted, and you know, people were really coming together, really depending on one another for support. There was one person who turned up with a guitar and people crowded around him to sing "You'll Never Walk Alone." You've seen all different age groups coming, from children as young as 4 to 84, coming together as families, in their couples, as friends, just to kind of be together, just support one another. On the other side of the ground, they opened up a book of condolence and people were queuing up in their hundreds to pay their respects to Diogo Jota. And unfortunately, it is for this city that this is not the first tragedy to rock the people of Merseyside. They have actually been through similar incidents in the past. So you really do get a sense that when you are here, that it is the people of the city that really make it so special, because they know how to depend on one another and support one another when such wounds open up.
Yeah, I mean, very, very tragic. My understanding is he was recently married and he was also a young father.
Yeah, so he's 28 years old, got married just 11 days ago, and he was living on cloud nine at the time of his death. He had obviously won the Premier League with Liverpool, he won the Nations League with Portugal, getting married, 3 beautiful young children, and completely just caught in his prime in an accident that could really happen to anyone. He really was a humble man. That is the main description there, as everyone's been saying that, not just as a footballer, but as a human. You know, a wonderful father who always put his family first, and as we know, in his dying moments spent with his brother.
Yeah, truly tragic news there for Anfield, for Liverpool, and indeed for the world of football. Thank you ever so much, Amelia Beltrao. Right, well, let's do one phone call, shall we, before we hit the top of the hour, and let's speak now to Chris, who is in Epsom. Good morning, Chris.
Hi, Alex. I know the family aren't listening, but my heart goes out to Jota's wife and the 3 kids. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of someone's a millionaire or a pauper, a young man there, just newly married, a young father, a humble man, as he's been described, in a tragic, tragic accident.
Brings you back to reality, doesn't it?
It does, it does.
Now, I've only got a couple of minutes, and I know you're going to get to the top of the hour, and then you're going to go, oh, we've got to go for the news. So, I'm going to go quick.
All right.
Because I know you well.
Well, do you know what? I'll tell you what, you don't know me that well, because I can do a 4-hour stint. I've got the bladder of a camel. I never go to the loo in my advert breaks, and I'm not even sitting on a commode. I'm just young and healthy.
Have you got an egg and bacon sarnie under the counter?
No, that's breakfast time. And Dean only gets me the full English when I sort of set the alarm at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm afraid on a weekday, it's just cups of tea.
Right, Starmer. He's not going to stop. He doesn't want to stop these boats. And the reason is that he's going to push the brick card on us, and he's going to try and say it's because of all the illegal immigrants. We don't know who's in the country, and it's a way of IDing everyone. That's how he's going to try and sell it to everybody.
But, I mean, look, speaking to James Price earlier, he's kind of anti the idea of digital ID. I've never been that bothered by it, really. I mean, you know, we've got passports, we've got medical... I mean, I'm like, I don't do anything wrong in life. I'd like to know that there are people who are asked for your identity when they commit a crime, when they try and get treatment on the NHS, and are told, oh, OK, you can't have that.
Alex, you're well informed, but you're not on this. If you look at the WEF and what the EU card is getting them to do, they're already talking about putting carbon credit on your ID card, so you can buy so much petrol, you can have 1 or 2 flights a year. If you can't afford them, you can sell your carbon credits to the rich people who the rules won't apply to. And if they bring in central bank digital currencies, which they're talking about as well, and put them on your card, mate, your freedoms are finished, completely finished.
That is my concern. I did say that earlier on in the show. My concern is if we digitise NHS medical records, which I think, why haven't we? It seems mad that they're all in paper files in dusty cellars of GP surgeries spread out around the country. If, like me, you've lived in a gazillion and 1 different places. I quite like the digitisation of medical records. I don't mind the idea necessarily of having an identity card, but, and I take your point on this, my worry is, like you said, it becomes like a social credit system where they're monitoring the sort of foods you're buying, where they're monitoring your exercise and your health, where they're monitoring, like you said, carbon emissions. And then this little card, this little sort of central database starts taking on a life of its own, like a mini tyrant.
Alex, I've got. You're going to go to the news, and I wanted to talk to you about the net zero.
Well, do you know, you're right. We are going to go to the news, actually. So thank you for teeing that up for me, Chris, because as you know, the top of the hour break is what we like to call in the industry a hard out, which means if I carry on talking as the countdown's going on in my ear, lovely Sam just presses a button and bins me off air to play the commercials, which are happening now. But don't go anywhere, because I'm going to see you on the other side of this. Put the kettle on, and I'll see you in just a moment.
Jeremy. Brittany here from...
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is Alex Phillips with you until 1 o'clock today, and it's a very newsy day indeed because, well, you can always guarantee you have a distinct precipitation of policy projections every time a government is in trouble. And after little Rachel was sobbing on the green benches and people were saying, well, he ain't going to last long, is he? That's Starmer. He's in trouble. The backbenchers don't like him. The rebellion has already started, and only 1 year into his premiership today, of course, is the 1 year anniversary of Sir Keir Starmer getting the keys to number 10. We find ourselves in a situation where the government are going, right, distract. We need to get some good news stories out there. So they are rolling out an NHS app. I'm kind of supportive of it. They're saying that we're going to have windworms in every single field of the land. So our energy bills are cut and 45,000 jobs are created. And it's only going to take £40 million of community expenditure. There's a good old Ed Zero sticking to his guns when it comes to taxing the bejeez out of us to make sure all of his renewables are there, making money for his cohort and taking money from us, quite frankly. You've also got Yvette Cooper saying she's going to crack down on shoplifting with facial recognition technology from New Zealand that she's encouraging all high street chains to sign up to, and injecting more community police officers onto our streets. So they've really come out of the stalls this morning, haven't they, trying to distract us all with their little sort of new baubles here, their shiny things, their promises, their packages, their presents. So we go, oh, this Labour government aren't in trouble at all. Look at them. They've got such great ideas and they're full steam ahead. But it is, of course, the 1 year anniversary, and a difficult year it has been indeed for Sir Keir Starmer. Let's speak now to Paul Embry, who's a writer and a trade unionist. He's also a pro-Brexit campaigner and wrote a brilliant book called Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class. Paul, good morning to you. Happy birthday to the Labour government. But it hasn't really been a happy birthday, has it? It's pretty grim out there looking at the polling. What do you make of 1 year of Labour chaos?
Well, good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
I mean, the truth is that the Labour Party in opposition made promises and bet the farm on getting growth into the economy, getting immigration numbers down to respectable levels, getting National Health Service waiting lists down, and have not made anything like sufficient progress on those three things. That's the truth of it after a year. And I think that there is a general sense in the country still that Britain is in quite a sharp decline, that things are broken, that the economy is broken, that infrastructure is crumbling, that public services don't work properly, that we're not getting to grips with crime on our streets, that there's quite a large degree of social disintegration going on in our communities, and that in order to rectify that quickly, we need a kind of shock therapy, but the Labour government simply doesn't have the wherewithal or the will to be able to administer that shock therapy. And unless that happens fairly quickly, I think things are probably going to get worse for the Labour government and for the country.
I mean, the Labour government have spent a year essentially blaming everything on what they inherited, the sort of 20 billion black hole, which became a 40 billion black hole, which then they taxed employers and taxed farmers and took heating away from grannies in order to fill. And yet it sort of reappeared again, like the hole in the ozone layer re-emerging. And I find it difficult now for the Labour Party to turn around and say, well, this must be all the work of the Tories. I think we all know they did inherit a pretty cataclysmic point of history for the United Kingdom. But it seems to me that their medicine is actually making things a lot worse.
Well, look, I think in many respects the country needs massive investment to try to remedy some of the big problems that I outlined earlier. It needs massive investment on its own terms, but also because otherwise where is growth in the economy going to come from? It comes through investment, it comes through increase in demand, it comes through increase in people's disposable incomes. And I think what Rachel Reeves has done is she sort of placed herself into this fiscal straitjacket unnecessarily and hasn't given herself the room to be able to make the sufficient levels of investment in order to be able to kickstart the economy. And of course, if you do that, you increase growth and you increase your tax revenues and so on. And unless the government, I think, understands that by locking itself into that strategy, it's really thwarted itself from having the ability to do the things that are necessary to get growth, and to improve public services and to stop infrastructure crumbling and so on, then it's going down a dead end. And I think the problem as well is that when governments have lost the faith of the public, when they've reached rock bottom in terms of the polls, it's very difficult to get it back. I remember 1992. And Black Wednesday, which happened when we crashed out of the ERM 6 months after the Tory government under John Major had been re-elected. And they never, ever regained the trust of the British electorate after that. And even though they subsequently got growth into the economy, and come 1997, the economy was in fairly good shape, the public were never going to vote for them again because that trust had gone. And I think the problem for Labour is that it's looking that scenario in the eye now. And unless it does something quickly to turn things around, then I think that it can kiss goodbye to any chance of being elected again next time out.
I mean, some might say that the Labour Party were trying to give themselves that manoeuvrability, that headroom to start building growth in the economy that you said Rachel Reeves so desperately needed. And arguably, the Labour Party has tried to do this to some degree. They have tried making cuts that have been deeply unpopular, whether it be to winter fuel allowance, whether it be adding taxes to national insurance paid by employers, even though they haven't messed about with taxes by employees, ends up all being from the same soup. But they have been challenged by their backbenchers. Do you think it might be to some degree a bit of a relief to Starmer that people like Zara Sultana, who were booted out of the party early doors for going against the Labour government's efforts to try and control public spending, have now set up a new party, apparently with Jeremy Corbyn, although apparently he didn't get the memo before she announced this, that this might actually help if the hard left are siphoned off from the backbenchers who go into their own entity, that might actually give Starmer and Reeves a bit of wriggle room to start making decisions that aren't really in the Labour Party's DNA but need to be taken in order to make sure our economy is not decimated.
Well, I always remember Tony Benn saying that in order to fly, the Labour Party, like a bird, needs two wings. It needs its right wing and it needs its left wing. And the Labour Party, I mean, I've been in the Labour Party for 30 years. It's always been a broad church. And I think it's been the better for having people on the left arguing for the things that they argue, often acting as an anchor on governments and leaders that are more to the right, let's say. And making sure that the party stays true to its historical mission. I don't have particularly much time for Zara Sultana personally. I think she engages in what I would call a student-style politics, the sort of sixth form common room politics. It's not serious politics, and I don't for a second imagine that this particular initiative is going to take hold. I mean, they will certainly win, I'm sure, support amongst people who Labour is already largely popular among. That's the people in our fashionable cities and university towns, student activists, radicals and student radicals, social activists and so on. But when it comes to whether or not this initiative is going to win support in the places that the Labour Party needs to hold on to, the red wall, working class, blue collar constituencies, I don't think there's a cat in hell's chance of that happening.
I mean, those people largely are likely to back Nigel Farage, it seems. And looking at the polling is, well, let's see if it lasts for 4 years. Certain publications, including the fantastic and fascinating Sun newspaper, who were part of our stable of excellence, a few floors below me now, have done a big interview with Nigel Farage today. And he's really talking about how public attitudes towards him have changed. He talks about his UKIP days. I remember them well because I was his right-hand woman back then. And essentially the sort of public opprobrium he felt. People sort of going, oh, isn't he dreadful? Oh, I don't want to admit that I actually quite like him. How UKIP was sort of in the weeds, polling in at sort of 10, 12, 13% usually at best. But yet today he commands 30% in the polls and would land most seats if an election was called tomorrow. Now, you know Nigel as a Brexiteer, as somebody who's worked at our partner station, rival station, but in the same sort of, let's say, in the same sort of part of the political spectrum. What do you make of Nigel Farage? Has he got it in him to be the next Prime Minister? Is he a serious pick, in your opinion?
Well, there's no doubt that there is another huge political realignment going on in British politics, and Reform are reaping the dividends from that alignment. I think that Reform is certainly not UKIP. I think it's a much more professional outfit than UKIP. I think it's going to stick around and is going to continue to lead the opinion polls for some time yet. And I mean, certainly in terms of the threat to Labour, they have very much parked their tanks on Labour's lawn. Reform came second in 98 constituencies in the general election last year, 89 of which were won by Labour and 60 of which were in the north of England. And I think that when people in those constituencies look at the state of the country, the decline, the fact that they don't sense that things have changed for the better over the last year. Clearly, they are looking at Reform in quite significant numbers. So I think it's very possible that Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister.
Would he make a good Prime Minister, though? Because what's interesting about this interview in The Sun is the criticism that he seems to get from a lot of people out there who would rather he isn't Prime Minister, who suggest he's not serious, that he's a bit of a caricature, that his sort of drinking, his boozing, his rabble-rousing, his shouting about what politics should be from the sideline, however influential and impactful, aren't necessarily the ingredients that would make him a statesman. I mean, look, I've got my own opinions on this. I think he'd be superb. I actually think he's got, actual character, fortitude, ideology, charisma and conviction. He's one of few politicians in the modern age who could actually stand up to world leaders and stand up to big supranational organisations, elements like the ECHR, and say, no, we're done with this. And yet other people look at him and think that, frankly, he is a clown. What do you make of the man?
I think he is clearly a very shrewd political operator, arguably the shrewdest political operator in Britain. And I think he connects with ordinary working people in a way that many politicians simply can't do. He has that image about him, he loves a pint, he loves a ciggy, and he'll go into the pub and he'll speak to people on their terms. Now, there's lots of things that I don't agree with Nigel on. And I certainly wouldn't vote reform. But there's no question that people, and I think he probably can do the statesman thing. Actually, I think I don't see him as somebody like Trump, who I think, frankly, is an oaf and somebody who I've got very little respect for on a personal level. I think Farage can do that thing where he can speak to ambassadors and other senior politicians and world leaders and so on. He's got an edge about him, and I think they would be uncomfortable with him. But the key thing is the message right from reform? Are they saying the things that he's going to entice millions of people to vote for them? And the reality is, at the moment, they are. They're saying, look, the country's broken. Our national and local institutions are failing us. They've been captured by sort of extreme wokery. You don't recognise the country that you grew up in, and we're the people who are going to put a wrecking ball through the status quo. That is a very, very enticing message for many people when they look at their own lives and the fact that they see the country crumbling around them. And that's why I think reform are not going to be shifted off the top of the opinion polls probably for some time, if at all.
Do you think the Labour Party, in sort of this attempt to cover off reform, because they know, at least Morgan McSweeney seems to know where the political threat is coming from, when they look at the polls and the backsliding to becoming one of the least popular premierships in UK history, do you think they've got it in them to do the things that many people in the general public want to see them do, which is sort of mass deportations, which is getting rid of all the net zero targets? Because I wonder if they've got the bottle to actually follow through on certain pledges or promises. I mean, not that they're promising mass deportations. They talk a good talk on controlling our borders, but the proof in the pudding is in the eating. And certainly when it comes to energy bills, whatever they promise us, they're talking today about rolling out or lifting an embargo on the creation of onshore wind farms and rolling out a massive sort of turbine project across our green and pleasant land. It seems to me that they're just sort of digging down and going further and further in the opposite direction to that which most voters out there want to see this country go.
Well, I think, as I said at the beginning of the discussion, I think there are three things that Labour needs to do really seriously quickly. That's get growth into the economy, get immigration numbers down to a respectable level, and get National Health Service waiting lists down. If they don't do all of those three things, I think they've got big, big problems in store. Now, I think that there are some people at the top of the party and elsewhere who do understand that. I mean, we've seen this Red Wall caucus of Labour MPs that has come together and said, yeah, this is exactly the sort of strategy we need in order to keep the reform wolf from the door, so to speak. I think Morgan McSweeney himself gets it instinctively in a way that Keir Starmer doesn't. So there are, I think, some good people around who are articulating what you might call blue Labour ideas, the sort of ideas that I and a few others have been articulating in the Labour Party for some years now. But unless it happens quickly and unless they get the backing of the Parliamentary Labour Party to do some of this stuff, and I'm sceptical that they will do, then I think they've got a very, very challenging time in store.
Paul, I tend to agree with you. I don't think there's a radical bone, really, when it comes to sort of policies need to be taken in the Labour Party's DNA, certainly when you need to sort of cut the cost of welfare, something that they don't seem to be able to do. We live in interesting political times, that is for certain. Paul, thank you so much for coming on and giving us your perspective as someone of a Labour background, as someone who wouldn't vote reform, but is saying this government are going to have to make some big, tough decisions. Have they got it in them? Paul doesn't seem to think so. Frankly, neither do I. What do you think? You can let me know your opinion on this and anything else we're talking about today. At any point during the programme, 03444 99 1000 is the number to call if you'd like to talk to me live on air, and you can register your interest with James, who's ready to take your call, and jot down your details at any point during the programme. And then when we do a call segment, he will give you a call back and put you through to the studio. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note. Please leave me a voice note. I do like playing those out. 03444 99 1000. If you'd rather send me a text message, it's 87222, but you've got to write the word talk before you type out your text. That way, it manages to evade all of the weird unidentified orbs in the sky, that funny thing that looks like a giant pencil flying through the universe at 230,000 light years that is going to pass through the Earth's atmosphere, and no one knows what it is. Is it a sign from outer space? It could be your text message. 87222. Talk at the front of it, please. We're on X at talkTV, and I'm back after this to discuss the pretty alarming news story out today that the Home Office is totally unaware of how many people might have outstayed their visas in this country. Slow clap to that. I'll see you on the other side of these ads.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Let's squeeze in some of your messages, shall we? Because I've been a bit remiss in reading them out. Tanya in London says, good morning, Alex. Why do we need ID cards if we have national insurance numbers? Well, the thing is, have you still got your national insurance card? I kind of remember what mine looked like. It was sort of red, I think. Red and blue, was it? Got given that at the age of like 14 or something. I don't have it anymore. No, it's so if you go to the doctor's appointment, you can say, here you go, I pay my taxes. I deserve some treatment rather than be some character who's got off a boat. Mind you, they skip the queue and they get all the goodness anyway, don't they? Makes me sick. But, you know, there is an argument if we're actually going to crack down on illegal immigration. We need to know who is illegal and who is not. Glyn in Catterick says, please don't hold back and just say it how it is. Don't you worry, Glyn, that is exactly what I'm going to do. Right, now talking about we need to know who's illegal and who's not. Border Force, Home Office, you have one key job. That's controlling our borders. It's knowing who is here on visas. That's the point of a visa, right? You have it in your passport. You show it when you come into the country. Yes, you're allowed in because you've been approved, because you've got a job, because you're going to pay a dividend to afford your health care, because you're not here to sponge off the system like a little parasite. But we welcome you, which is why we've given you this special visa. And then when you leave the country, it's like, OK, fine, you haven't overstayed your visa. Bye-bye. Record that. Off you go. We'll issue you a new one if you've been a good person and we want you back. But alas, it turns out that the Home Office hasn't a Scooby how many foreign workers stay in Britain to work illegally after visas expire, because the Home Office is failing to collect basic information on foreign workers, including whether they are carrying on here working illegally at the end of their visas. This is the Commons Public Accounts Committee found the department does not know how many foreign visa holders leave the country when they are supposed to. Well, that's just great, isn't it, Stephen Wolfe? I mean, you kind of think things can't get any worse. And then you go, great, even the basics are not being done. Shocking.
Well, look, every single day when you're looking at this, Alex, and you review the figures, and I've looked over the past week at what's called irregular migration numbers. These are the numbers of people that come over on small boats on the backs of lorries, in planes. But there's also a category called found in the UK. And often those are the people that perhaps are the individuals that have failed to actually renew their visas or leave the country when their visas are expired. That's one category. But when you send in freedom of information requests to the Home Office and say, can you tell us how many people have left the country after their visas expired? This is exactly what you're now discovering. That the National Audit Office are saying they just don't know. And every single time you find this out, you wonder to yourself, what is the permanent secretary for the Home Office who is being paid a huge amount of money, gets a very large pension, and at the end of the day will probably be made a member of the House of Lords or given some nice cushy job in an NGO? What are they doing in terms of finding out things that we need to know and stop people breaking the law?
This is the mystery of the lot of it, isn't it? Because if I don't pay my licence fee, they've got some big sort of satellite dish van that comes around and knows if I'm watching my telly box, and I'll get a very angry letter and a fine. Similarly, if I don't pay my car insurance and I'm bimbling down the motorway, some sort of, camera will read my licence plate and sort of send a message to the nearest police officer going, this woman is driving without car insurance, and I'll be duly pulled over. So why on earth, when people on a visa, you have to put where you're living, where you're working, time's up, you haven't left the country, where's the knock on the door with border forces saying, oi, you, get out, you've overstayed your welcome? It is the pure basics.
That's because they don't really fund the border force deportation unit. I don't know if you noticed last night, or whether you caught up on this, but in the big, beautiful bill by which Trump pushed through, $100 billion was sent towards border force and what's called ICE. They're the removal people who take out people whose visas have expired or they're illegal immigrants. If we had the same sorts of money put into our border force so that they went out into the enforcement units, then we wouldn't be finding these difficulties. They would be able to link perhaps previous employment, taxation, national insurance, all of those connected to those people who've got a visa here for work, or those who are students whose visas have gone because they've not left the country either. Be able to find out where they went. But we need to put money into this system to track them down and remove them. They don't, because it's just part of, unfortunately, the elite's idea that it's uncomfortable, not nice, over their dinner tables to remove people who are breaking the law by staying here.
Now, I don't know if you've seen London of late, but you go down the Mall and it's festooned with the tricolore because Emmanuel Macron is coming over to do a bit of a state visit. And the French, of course, who we've given loads of money to, are supposed to be stopping those boats for us. But we learned, didn't we, that it doesn't matter how many millions you give to the French police and the gendarmerie, they don't like getting their loafers wet, do they? And for a long time, they weren't going to go into the seas to stop the boats. And then the BBC today, proud as punch they are, because the BBC have actually been down to Calais. That's right. They've left their ivory towers at the top of Oxford Street and have actually gone down to the beaches to see what the French police are up to, and have managed to record a hard-hitting story, not like any other journalist has ever done this before, where they videoed the French police stopping one small boat. Go on! Get away! Go on, BBC. Go on, the French police. That's the way to do it, my son. But the ridiculous thing here, the BBC report, as far as I understand, there was sort of all of a sudden the boat comes in into the sea and all the people waiting on the beaches, the police are just sitting there eating their baguettes, their croissants with their Nutella, going, wonder what's going to happen here.
See every day.
Right, and then all of a sudden the boat comes in and they're all like, run, let's get on the boat. They're all scrambling through the shallow waters because, of course, the French police aren't allowed to get their toes wet. They get into the boat and they start up the engine, and they're motoring out into the channel going, this is it, off we go to Calais, can't wait for our free hotels, our driving lessons, our mobile phones, Bournemouth Beach, the lot of it. And then the motor goes on. It goes wrong. And so the boat's then drifting back towards the shores, at which point the French police go, ooh la la, zut alors, and jump out with a pair of scissors and go, boop, and pop the dinghy. Well done, I say. I mean, it's just pathetic, isn't it? This is, if they wanted to stop those boats, I am fairly certain they could stop those boats.
Oh, I don't think that. I mean, I think after that, if you'd give them that kind of like encouragement, they might have actually gone and done that because they'd be embarrassed by the way that they are. But they just don't care. Look, they're laughing at us all the way. The police are laughing at us. And I actually was fascinated to hear how Marie Le Pen's head of immigration, who is a mayor, actually announced that if Marie Le Pen had been in power, they would have been stopping the boats a long time ago. And he explained how they would do it. He said, it is ridiculous that we, the French, watch the boats go out and then we escort them with our French Navy to the border until the English border people come along and take them away. He said all we would do is use our French Navy to force the boats back to the French border. We would do it. That's why we would be the friends of the British in this case. Right. But we would go further. We would stop people coming into France with Schengen as well. So they have a very cohesive policy. So if the French equivalent of Front National, or what they call the National Party now, are able and willing to do it, then it shows that the French government just are unwilling to do it and don't care.
Right, and so this is the thing, it would help France a lot, because the reason so many people are traipsing through various European countries and setting up in dangerous encampments in Calais and terrorising the local community is because they want to get to Britain. And if the French stop them from doing it, the migrants probably then wouldn't come to France, because they know in France all that is waiting for them is a pot of gruel by Care for Calais and a makeshift camp. But the French also have a point, don't they, when they say that Britain is basically El Dorado for these people. I put on X the other day, because I thought about this, right? And I was like, if someone said to me, pay $5,000 to some character from Kurdistan, and he's going to make sure I can get on a boat to Lanzarote, I can land on the shores, and on landing on the shores, I get given a really nice hotel that is full board. Yeah, I get to stay in a hotel that is 100% full board. I'll even get pocket money. They'll give me a new phone. They might even give me tickets to local events. Free travel passes. I won't have to work at all. In fact, I shouldn't work. But don't worry if I want to go and spend some pocket money on the beaches. I can just illegally deliver some food in the night time. Frankly speaking, I love my job, right? I really like it here. This is my country. I mean, I don't like Britain so much anymore, but I want to stand and defend it. But if someone said, do you want to go live in Lanzarote for free for a couple of years in a nice hotel, I'd say yes. That is the madness of the situation.
It is, and what they're not, they're kind of also missing the point is that when these people are leaving Somalia, when they're leaving their countries in Africa or Iran and Iraq, their average incomes are like £4,000 or £5,000 a year. That's more than they're actually going to make more than that in a couple of months working for Deliveroo or somebody else whilst they're getting free accommodation. So they're able then to use the money that they save to use the people smugglers' illegal methods of getting the money back to their country. And therefore, they're also funding crime. So they don't care. They're happy to come over. They're earning more than they would do back home. They're able to send money back home to their families, all done through illegal means. And we think that is perfectly acceptable in this country, that there's nothing wrong with it. Well, according, not people like you and I, and the normal citizens of this country don't care. They do care about it, but the governments and the elites don't. And that will not change for some reason until somebody in political power gets into place, whether it's reform, whether it's somebody else, who are unable to say we're going to enact policies that oppose what the current policies by governments are, and we will be forcing the deportation of individuals, closing our borders, changing our laws, removing ourselves from the European Court of Human Rights, seeking amendments of the UN Convention on Refugees, amending laws and our common laws to ensure that previous case law no longer applies, and of course changing the immigration rules to prevent people from coming here just because their beards can't be cut in a different way in a different country, or they don't like chicken McNuggets.
I know. It's madness. It's madness. We've got to get rid of these lefty judges, don't we? Stephen, it'd be remiss if I didn't comment on your amazing sort of setting you have there. Look at the state of that decor. That is brilliant. You look like you're in Monet's fantasy. Well done, whoever did that.
I love it. This was once a dark and dingy place, and now it's joyful and summer.
It is a riot of colour. I like it indeed. When I move into my new place in Gloucestershire, Stephen, will you come over and do the decorating for me? Because I kind of like that look. That is a strong aesthetic.
Gladly help.
There you go. Stephen Wolfe, a brilliant decorator, migration expert and former MEP. We're taking a short break now, but we're going to be getting an opinion from Reform UK on their chances if a general election was held tomorrow. This big interview of Nigel Farage in The Sun and 1 year of Labour chaos. That's coming up after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. So I'm sniggering because Dean just gave me some sweets, right? My producer came and said, do you want a sweet? Do you want a sweet? So I've got chewy cola bottles, and I had one in my mouth, and Sam, who's sort of timing me in and out of adverts, said, we're coming back now, and I've had to, like, spit out my lovely chewy sweet and just lay it on my desk like the oik that I am. You didn't need that information, did you? But hey-ho, you got it anyway. Sharing is caring. And on that theme, shall we have some voice notes? Because people have been sharing their thoughts and feelings. This is Joanne.
Morning, Alex. So, Labour, yeah, I think all they're actually capable of doing is managing decline. Nobody seems to revert back to what happened in 2010 when they left government with actually a note saying there was no money left. But yet they go around telling everybody how terrible the Conservatives were. Collectively, they are all failures and they are all responsible for the decline of this country. The unfortunate thing is that's only going to get worse under Labour, and we need them to be gone as soon as possible.
Well, I can't really say I disagree with any of that, to be honest. Let's now listen to what Andy thinks on the situation.
I think this government knows it's done. A couple of months ago, they probably knew it's done. It's not been run by proper business people. They're just chances. They're going to turn into a kamikaze government, aren't they, where they don't care what they're going to do. They're going to try and pass enough laws to really muck it up for the next government coming in. So then they can sit there in opposition, or not even opposition, but they can go, oh, you know, you can't change it. So it's going to take years to try and unravel them.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you really think that they're sort of that malicious, that they'd actually mess up the country just so they can sit in opposition with a smug smirk on their face? Let's have a listen now to Simon.
By the time 2029 comes around, I really do believe that the country will be on its knees financially, completely overwhelmed, and that will make it actually easier for Farage to govern the country, because we will literally be begging for change, radical change, because that's what it's going to need. It's going to need radical change. Can't tinker around the edges anymore. It's an end of an era at the moment. You know, we've not even bottomed out yet. Things are going to get a hell of a lot worse, and it probably needs to, for Farage to actually grasp it and realise that he's got a complete open goal to build the country back up again.
Well, on that note, shall we speak to someone from Reform UK? Indeed we shall, because this is Alex Wilson AM, who is a Reform UK London Assembly member. Welcome to the show, Alex. Now, there we had Simon basically saying the country is going to be so decimated that actually that's going to pave the way to number 10, and Nigel Farage is the man to put us all back together again. But I would challenge this. He's got no experience. Nobody in Reform UK has ever been even in the shadow cabinet, let alone in government. They don't understand the mechanisms of Whitehall. They don't understand how narrow and difficult the path to success is, how very little you can actually do with a bloated civil service, with various quangos, with the membership of supranational organisation, with leftist lawyers. It's all very well standing at the sideline saying, I'm going to save the country. Can he?
Well, Alex, it's great to be on the show again. I would reply to that, yeah, the Conservatives had a lot of experience in government and they made a lot of mistakes. They got it horribly, horribly wrong. And Labour, they've got experience in Parliament and they're getting it horribly wrong as well. So I think what's also important is to have experience in the real world, in business, in creating jobs, in understanding what makes people tick on a daily basis. And that's something that Reform will bring in spades. When we get a large number of MPs elected with, say, real world experience in business, in the services, in public service, and that's what we're going to bring, and that judgment and that mindset that we will do things differently, and we're not going to stand for the blob getting in the way. But what's quite remarkable about the last year, we've had this Labour government. They were elected with a big majority. You can query whether they deserved the majority they got based on the electoral system that we have, but they had this opportunity, and what's very, very remarkable is that they had no honeymoon whatsoever. Normally, a new government comes in for the first year, 18 months, 2 years, they can do no wrong. Well, this government has shown that they can do no right on the economy, on migration, on the farmers, all these issues. They're getting it wrong, getting it badly wrong, and it's ordinary working people who are paying the price.
Now, you say that Reform's going to be different because it's going to have real people from business, people who are entrepreneurs, industrialists, who know how the world works, people of talent to come in and help change the country. But arguably, you've had those people, and guess what? They didn't toe the line. They didn't play party politics. They summarily got booted out. People like Rupert Lowe, people like Ben Habib, who set up his own weird little party. It's not the problem, actually, that you can have all of these brilliant alpha males with great life experience, but they soon enough don't know how to be a cog in the machine, can't deliver, can't be collegiate.
Well, you have to have a clear sense of purpose and a clear sense of direction, and that's what Nigel has got. And he's building the team around him, people that will be loyal, will stick together and work hard to change the country. Because we've only got one chance at this. If we've got another 4 years of this Labour government, damaging the economy. Already, business confidence is plummeting. We've had over 250,000 jobs destroyed since Rachel Reeves's budget with her national insurance jobs tax, which has hurt hospitality and retail and low-paid and part-time workers in particular. Another 4 long years of this is going to be very, very hard for the country to bear. But it means that we have only got one shot to get it right, and that's what's going to happen in 2029.
It's not the problem when you talk about 4 long years that if we were in 2029 to get a reformed government, the things that they need to do before they can even start making a dent in introducing the sorts of radical sweeping policies that may be needed to change our trajectory, things like getting out of the ECHR, things like having a great repeal bill to uproot all of the human rights legislation that these leftist activist lawyers are using to prevent the deportation of criminals. Those things are going to take a huge amount of time. You're going to have the muscularity of a bloated state doing everything they can to block it. We saw what happened after Brexit, for crying out loud. The referendum was in 2016. It took 4 years for us to even be listened to and actually begin to enact what people had asked for. It's going to be 4 long years if Reform do get into power in 2029 to even begin doing the sorts of things that they want to do.
Well, that's why we have to get the big, powerful mandate for change. You're absolutely right to point at Brexit as being an example of where the views of the public, very clearly expressed in that referendum, and it took a long time to get to the other side of that because we had a Tory government. We had Theresa May, who appointed Ollie Robbins as her chief negotiator in dealing with Brexit. And when you have people who don't believe in the cause, it's always going to fail. So you need to have people who are absolutely on board, that strong mandate from the public, and we have to deliver because politics at the moment isn't working. And we have an opportunity, thanks to the wheels coming off the Labour government so very, very quickly, at the same time as people's memories are still very fresh about the failures of the Tories. That's what's given us this huge opportunity. It's why we're doing so well in the polls. It's why we're doing well in the local elections just a couple of months ago, and still in council by-elections week on week. We're gaining seats. And but we're going to take that opportunity, take that chance, and really show that we have to deliver, because if we can't deliver, then no one can.
I'm going to let you into a little secret, Alex. In this interview, they are questioning Nigel's bon vivant lifestyle and the fact that he is still a loyal devotee of the PFL, the proper effing lunch. My little confession is I invented that acronym, by the way. I didn't invent the PFL, but I was the one who gave it that particular title. So, hey, well done, Alex. But do you think that that sort of approach to life by Nigel, do you think the fact that he is a 61-year-old chain-smoking, pint-drinking, likes a long lunch, is that conducive to running the country well? Because he's asked in an interview with The Sun about that. He sort of references people like Winston Churchill saying, well, he had, basically a pint of champagne before he even got out of bed, and he managed to run the country during wartime. But in this modern era, when you're in charge of the nuclear button, when you've got to deal with foreign investors, ambassadors, you own backbenchers, can you really be so lackadaisical and joyful about your approach to life? Does it help?
Well, it shows that he's human, and that's something that Keir Starmer certainly doesn't appear to be. He's, dull and boring and technocratic, whereas we want someone who's got a bit of life, a bit of vigour about him, and Nigel's certainly got that. Now, I've never experienced a PFL with him. I'd certainly love to. I'm sure I'd enjoy it very much indeed. But no, it's about being relatable, about being someone that people can connect with, and you see that when he goes on his walkabouts, when he meets people, when he goes out campaigning, everybody wants to speak to him, wants a piece of Nigel because he's someone they can relate to, someone who they can put their faith in, and but don't let that kind of side of him suggest that he's not absolutely deadly serious. When I was in my last meeting with him a few weeks ago, you could just tell the eyes, the body language. He is serious about becoming Prime Minister. He's never had this opportunity before. UKIP did great things, secured the referendum by putting pressure on the Conservatives to deliver that, but never had a shot at real power. This is where the situation is very, very different now. Nigel knows that, and the people around him know that, and all of us are going to pull together and make sure we do everything we can to keep this momentum going. Look, 4 years is a long time. Week's a long time in politics. 4 years is a very long time in politics. Polls can go up, they can go down. All sorts of things can happen along the way. But the position that we're in now, professionalising the party, building the branch network, winning council by-elections week in, week out, sort of honing our campaigning techniques, getting the machine in the best possible state it can be. When that general election comes, we are going to be a real force to be reckoned with, something the like of which has never been seen before.
Alex Wilson, Reform UK, thank you ever so much for joining us. You know, perhaps Nigel's strategy as a statesman is going to get the PM of the Maldives absolutely monstered on a vat of claret. And while he's sitting there in the fetal position in the corner of the room being force-fed aspirin, he's going to go get the Chagos Islands back. There's a thought. Right, we're going to take a short break now, but after the break, I'd love to catch up with some of you. So the number to dial 0344 499 1000 if you want to be patched through to the studio. It's your normal network rate. You can use that number as well to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice message on WhatsApp, which I'll then play out. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. You've got to write the word talk before you'll text if you're going to be old school about this. We're on X at talkTV, and I'm back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Let's go to the phones now, shall we? And our first guest is Paul in Bolton. Good morning to you, Paul.
Hiya, Alex. I was just, funnily enough, before I speak about what I rang in for, you were saying about Nigel Farage with the smoking and the drinking. And obviously he's 61. I don't think he looks always very healthy myself. And in 4 years' time, has anyone considered that the smoking and drinking might have taken its toll, you know, for him to be well enough to be a leader? Because he's been doing it for a very long time now, hasn't he? And I think if I was to compare him and Keir Starmer, to be fair to Keir Starmer, even though I'm not even his biggest fan at the minute, I'd say he looks a lot healthier than Nigel Farage, personally. But I was going to also say that I still think, relating to that conversation, I still think Keir Starmer's I'm working class, I'm from Bolton West, and I still think Keir Starmer's more relatable than Nigel Farage, because I just feel like it's a bit of an act with Nigel, and I do think Keir has mixed in more down-to-earth circles deep down. But if you're wanting a really down-to-earth politician, then someone like Angela Rayner is much more down to earth than either of the pair of them. Do you know what I mean?
So you'd rather have Big Ann, chair of the sort of WKD Blue Ibiza DJ set, Pride March and all of that. You'd rather she was Prime Minister?
Well, I'm gay myself, so I like Pride marches. But basically, well, to be honest, I'm not sure who wants to be Prime Minister. I was a big fan of hers, but obviously at the minute she's under a party that I don't always agree with on everything, because I actually think Labour's become a bit of an anti-LGBT plus party as well. So I've rang in to say I'm not saying I'd vote for him, because I'm actually thinking of standing myself on an LGBT plus anti-HIV stigma ticket in 2029 as an independent. And I do think the future of politics is more independence, less political parties, more independence. But I am quite excited to hear about this new party. I've known about it for a little while because I'm friends with one or two Liverpool independent councillors in Liverpool who actually beat Labour last year.
Is this the Zara Sultana party?
Yeah, well, there's a Liverpool Independent Community Party in Liverpool. It's not a party as such, but a couple of guys, Alan Gibbons and Sam Gorse, they stood as independents because they used to be in Labour, and because they were Corbynistas, they got chucked out of Labour, so they thought they'd stand against Labour as councillors, and they won. They proved that they could win with good landslides, and even Sam did quite well in the election in Liverpool, and Dan Carden's seat's looking a bit dicey now, he's blue Labour, so they've spoke to Jeremy Corbyn, so this has been on the cards for a while, and now obviously Zara Sultana's quit, there's a chance John McDonnell may Apsana Beg, and before you know it, they might have more MPs in the SNP. And I just think it's exciting because I think, like I say, we're always on about having an alternative for the Labour, Tories, the Lib Dems, but why has it always got to be a right-wing alternative? Why can we only have parties like Reform and UKIP, where I know the Green Party may be about to become a bit more left-wing?
Can the Green Party get any more left-wing?
But this is the thing, we all have different opinions on what's left and right, don't we, really? I mean, I thought all that with Bob Villan at the weekend was a bit of a storm in a teacup, but that's another debate. But basically, as I say, why can't we have a left-wing party? Why can't we take a left-wing party more seriously? Everything's got to be either centre to right, and like you say, you've not much time for the Greens, so like I said, Lib Dems are only centre, really, aren't they? Plaid and SNP are a bit more. And that's another thing. You've got someone like Stephen Flynn. He's quite relatable. It's a shame that he's not in English politics.
You know what, Paul, I'll tell you this much. I never thought I'd be sitting in the studio speaking to someone who's a listener of talk saying, do you know what? I want to get really radical left-wing. I want to vote for Magic Grandpa and Zara Sultana. But I actually agree with you in a sense that in democracy, isn't it lovely to actually have a choice? And if people want to vote a certain way, why should they have to compromise on the sort of legacy two-party system where everybody's just in a blob in the middle, that nobody's satisfied? They build cohorts of votes to the point that it becomes almost meaningless. And actually, if you are the sort of person who loves a bit of Bob Villan or, you know, wants pro-Gaza or wants to make sort of, you know, DEI policies the centre of everything, or actually just wants to sort of have proper socialism in an economic sense without the wokery, you know, actually variety and having something that actually one believes in, it's very healthy in a democracy. Now, Paul, I get the impression that with this party, you and I are unlikely to vote in the same direction, but I totally support your position, which is having the choice to do so. So thank you. Very, very enlightening call that from Paul in Bolton. Let's speak now to Mark in Lincolnshire. Good morning to you, Mark.
Hi there, Alex. Great show. Yeah, talking about, I mean, fair play to Paul, by the way. I'm kind of in the same boat as a UKIP member, so I know what he's talking about. In a way, I'd never agree with him politically, I think. But regarding Farage, I genuinely cannot see him as Prime Minister.
Why not?
I really can't, because. Number one, I think he's actually scared of it. That's my own personal opinion on whether he actually wants to be Prime Minister. I don't think he does.
Well, he's got a funny way of going about it. If he doesn't want to be Prime Minister, he could just sit and make a load of money doing speaking tours and presenting telly shows, surely.
Well, yeah, he could, but he also likes the glamour, doesn't he? And
do you think it's glamorous?
He gets absolute glamour. Of course he does. He always has. You know, go back to the UKIP days. You know, he comes. I was
on those days, Mark. I can tell you right now. The big sort of nationwide tours of town halls. I loved them, but the word glamorous is not what I would use to describe them. Hard blimmin' work is what I would use.
Yeah, well, they probably were hard work, but he got a lot of limelight for it, didn't he? He was always on TV.
But like I said, if he didn't want to be, if he didn't want to be a party leader, he could just always be on TV now, packing a fortune into his coffers. But he's not done that. He's actually left that world to come back into politics, which is pretty brutal and pretty relentless. As someone who's been on the road with him as his former right-hand woman, I can tell you right now, that ain't no easy life. You know, if I was him, I'd rather be earning the big bucks just being a TV pundit and a TV presenter. That's a far easier choice.
That all being said, and fair enough, you know, on the actual subject itself, whether he is going to be Prime Minister, whether he should be Prime Minister, no, he shouldn't. You know,
why not?
Because he's a man that he kind of, how do I put this politely? He kind of gets you so far, but he doesn't go all the way, shall we say? In so much as, you know, he wants to come out the ECHI, he wants to stop the boats, great, but it doesn't fix anything. That just will not fix a thing, and you know that, Alex.
Why won't it fix a thing, though? Why? No, I don't know that, because it's very clear that there's so many European countries now are talking about the straitjacket, the stranglehold that the ECHR is putting on their ability to deport criminals, to stop illegal migratory flows. This isn't some sort of radical, untested opinion. This is now a mainstream view of many countries in Europe who are saying that that court in Strasbourg, frankly, is the quagmire within which no decisions can be taken and nothing can be done. So I actually think it's exactly the right first step to take.
No, it's something that can be done. You know, by all means, come out the ECHR. But there are plenty of countries, including Britain itself, in many years gone by, that have completely and utterly ignored the ECHR anyway. It's only recently that we seem to have to rely on it wholeheartedly for every decision we make.
So you'd say that actually we don't need to leave the ECHR, we can stay in it, but just ignore it instead. But to which I would say, well, what's the point of being in it then? If you're just going to ignore it, you may as well leave it.
Exactly, so you may as well leave it. But the point I'm making is, it's not going to fix the actual problem, is it, Alex?
Well, what if what Nigel is saying here is leave the ECHR and tow boats back to France? That would surely fix the problem if the boats are being taken back to the French coastline.
Yes, but you're only fixing it from 2029, aren't you, Alex?
Aye, that's true.
What's he going to do about the 1.5 million that are already in the country?
No.
What's he going to do about the British culture that he claims that he wants to keep, that he absolutely admires and he loves it and all the rest of it? And apparently all these people are going to magically come here, have a pint of speckled hen, and they've got British culture. When the reality is, anybody with an actual brain realises that in 40 years, going just off the studies alone,
we'll be radically different. I agree. Them's be the big questions that are going to be needed to be answered before 2029. Mark in Lincolnshire, thank you so much for your call. Taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere. One more hour to go.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walk down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back, and it's good afternoon to you because the sun has now traversed over the sky and brought us into the PM section of the day. So do you know what that means? No, it doesn't mean pour the gin and tonic just yet. It means that there's still 1 hour of Alex Phillips to go. Right, and today it's been a busy old day in the world of politics because, as per usual, when a government's back's against the ropes, it just decides to launch every sort of policy initiative out there to try and distract us all from the burning disaster, the great brazier fire that is the Labour Party at present, and make them look like they've got really good ideas, a strategy for how to save the country, and they're getting on with it. So we're getting an NHS app, apparently, that's going to be using AI to scan our medical records and do all sorts of brilliant things for us and tell us that we're getting too fat, not walking enough, eating the wrong thing, smoking too many cigarettes, probably have cancer, and we'll get an appointment on the NHS in about 12 years' time. Way, can't wait for that one. We're also getting a load more windwams because Ed Zero has decided to lift the embargo on putting more wind turbines on our green and pleasant land that's been in place for 9 years because he wants loads of them up and down the country to apparently contribute to the grid. All it's going to do, Ed, is contribute to our bills and make us poorer while filling the pockets of people who have invested in renewables and own all the land. It's basically a reverse Robin Hood. Nana's going to freeze while the National Trust is going to fill their boots. Lots going on today in the world of politics, and I'm glad to say that to guide us all through it is a man whose excellence, whose erudition, whose sagacity, whose insights are the sharpest in the world. I mean, the best, the biggest, most brilliant brain in politics today. He should be running the country. It's my former television husband, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. Good morning. Good afternoon, Kev.
Hello, Alex. I don't know how I'm going to live up to that.
Yeah, you won't. It was definitely tongue-in-cheek.
I won't. Yeah, I can guarantee you that. Yeah.
Now, let's start off with Nigel, shall we? Because there's this big interview in The Sun today where, you know, they're asking him, brilliant Jack Elson, one of The Sun's sort of best political reporters, is saying, are you able...
Political editor. He just got promoted.
He's got, well...
Political editor.
Go on, Jack. Go on, son.
Very well deserved.
Very well deserved. He's an excellent journalist indeed. They've been asking Nigel, are you really the man for the job with your pint of beer, your 80 fags a day? Are you up for doing this? Are you not going to be a bit knackered? What are you going to actually do? Do you want to do this? What do you think? Do you reckon Nigel Farage is a statesman in waiting? Is this the man who can save Britain?
I'll tell you what, in that interview, he said something that really resonated with me, which was that, you know, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, people would come up to him and quietly say, I support you. Don't tell anyone, but I'm right behind you. And he calls it the supermarket test. So when he's in a supermarket these days, I'm not sure how many supermarkets he goes into, but he said people now come up to him and openly say, we love you, we love reform. So in other words, supporting reform is no longer people's guilty secret. They're out and they're proud. And I think that's a significant sea change going forward. And of course, you know, as we watch the kind of slow, painful, tearful disintegration of the Labour government, this can only be good news for reform. I mean, for every Labour disaster, it's a triumph for reform. People are just deserting Labour and the Tories and gravitating towards Mr. Farage, who knows how to talk. He knows how to talk normal English. He knows how to talk to people. So many of these politicians cannot relate to ordinary people. So I think watch for Reform's already impressive performance to get better.
What, there's someone doing some DIY in your house there, Kev? It's like,
yeah, hang on a second. Let me just shut up. Excuse me. Can you stop banging for a second? There you go.
Well
So
done.
I've got some builders in.
Excellent. That's live radio. I absolutely love it.
Television verite for everyone.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Pure professionalism. Let's talk about Nigel.
Rely on me.
What does it say on your mug? Oh, of course, Craven Cottage. I went for a walk along Hammersmith River the other day. And there's a pub there which is absolutely festooned in Fulham FC stuff. And I went in there and I was like, I bet Kev goes here all the time. I can't put it at school.
That'll be the Crabtree, probably. Yes, I do.
Yeah, of course you do. Now, talking about going to the pub all the time and professionalism, is it about time we had a Prime Minister who's a bit more normal, who doesn't have, oh, yes, look at my little armband. I've been to a Taylor Swift concert and got some new glasses from my mate Ali. Is it better? I like to go in the stands of Southampton and I like my Diet Coke and I like my Gucci loafers. Is it time that we had a Prime Minister who, like the average geezer down in Wetherspoons, is like, I like a pint, I like a cigarette, and actually I like Britain? Is that a good thing to have that? Is someone like Nigel just not really fitting anymore? I mean, Churchill might have got away with guzzling glasses of champagne before he even got out of bed with his massive stogie. But, you know, in the modern age, most of the world leaders out there are sort of all smartly dressed and, oh, no, I haven't smoked a cigarette since that wayward week in, 1962. Do you think actually that having a character like Nigel on the world stage will do us a lot of good? That other world leaders might be like, right, this is a real person who's had a lot of clout in politics and someone I'm not going to necessarily be able to get on side? Or is that going to make us a laughing stock?
No, I think, it's relatability. I mean, the thing about, as I was just saying, the thing about Nigel Farage, it's not actually, people say, oh, Nigel Farage can't relate to normal people because he went to public school and he used to work in the city. They say the same about Donald Trump. Donald Trump's lived a life of privilege. He was a billionaire from the day he was born. Both of those stories are kind of true. It isn't the point, though. Both of those men know how to talk to people. They can relate to people. It is the most important thing in politics. Keir Starmer, he's from a different planet. He can't talk to people. He can't relate to people. He doesn't understand ordinary people. Even when his chancellor's sobbing her heart out behind him, he doesn't even notice. It's absolute.
Here, go sort them builders out, Kev.
Can you stop banging for a second, please? Sorry about that.
I love this. This is absolutely hilarious. But no, yeah, you're right. The thing is with Starmer, people think of him as an automaton. They think of him as a robot. I mean, I quite like people with personalities, and I just think, be a human. Let's get on with it. Now, I've got a little video to show you because there's a story behind what you're about to see here, Kev, which is that apparently Transport for London, the chief, has been saying that all these people posting online videos of cleaning graffiti off tubes have actually been putting the graffiti up there themselves. Let's have a look at the vid.
Commissioner, you may have come across some social media posts or articles in the media where groups are taking it upon themselves to clear up graffiti on the tube network.
Firstly, would ask anybody not to take this matter into their own hands. We also have evidence of people creating graffiti and then removing it. So that's being investigated by the relevant authorities.
I mean, really? That actually, first of all, I think the first people who cleaning graffiti off the tube are doing it because there's loads of graffiti on the tube. Some lines, particularly the Bakerloo line, which has got more dead skin cells than, a whole collection of My Life of Eczema. Horrible blimmin' tube, that one. But it's covered in tags and rubbish, isn't it? It's disgusting. But do you actually think that people are putting graffiti on the tube themselves to then video themselves cleaning it up? If they are, why on earth are they not dealing with that? It just goes to show how sort of unprotected our tube system is.
Yeah, it's an old syndrome, actually. Those who cause the damage then step forward as the heroes who repair the damage. You'll find that a lot of the world's arsonists are fire brigade members, are firemen, fire ladies, firefighters. When I was in Los Angeles, there was a terrible spate of arson. And you know what happens in California when they set fire to trees and fields. I mean, the whole place goes up. And it was a whole summer of it. Somebody keeps starting fires. Turned out to be the fire chief who wanted to be a hero and put the fires out. So I suspect we've got a similar syndrome going on the tubes. Won't make any difference. They'll get worse and worse and worse. Why? Because who's in charge? TfL boss Sadiq Khan, and anything he runs will always be a disaster.
He's a grim little character, isn't he?
Oh,
let's talk about the Home Office, which is packed full of grim characters, it seems, because, I mean, every single day there's something that comes out, and I just think, are we really that rubbish at running our country that we've reached the level that the Home Office is not even collecting the data of who's leaving the country? So it's got no idea who has overstayed their visas. I mean, what's the point of even putting a visa in someone's passport if when someone then outstays and is living here illegally, you're not going to go knock on their door, yoink them off to an airport and say, off you go, sunshine, and don't ever think of coming back because you're now blacklisted. Apparently, the Commons Public Accounts Committee has found that the department doesn't even know how many foreign visa holders have left the country, so they've got no idea how many people are here illegally. And meanwhile, there are people out there charging ridiculous sums of money to give randos visas in the care sector, £20,000 sometimes, meaning they can come on this visa to apparently go and, give sponge baths to the elderly, don't actually do that, and just end up disappearing into the system.
This is extremely worrying. I mean, there are two fundamental governmental duties. One is to keep the people of your country safe. I would say that this government, and indeed Tory governments, haven't been doing that for about 15 years because they've been letting in anyone who breaks into the country without finding anything about them. And now it's not safe for women to walk the streets of this country. So they failed on that level. That's the Tories and Labour. The other fundamental governmental duty is to know who is here, to keep a track of who's living here, who's left, who's come. The Home Office have failed in this duty. They've just so this dates back to a new skilled visa initiative brought in by the Tories in 2020. Now, basically, they said to all foreigners, if you've got a skill, we might let you in. They immediately received 1,800,000 applications, most of whom were let in. And that has been going on at that kind of rate ever since. So what we're talking about now, the Home Office has admitted it hasn't kept records of these people. When their visas end, they have no idea whether they leave or stay. This could actually add up to, Alex, maybe 1 million, 2 million people who we just don't know whether they're here or not. And the chances are they are here. So this is this kind of, we talk about our migrant crisis, how many asylum seekers we've got in here, how much the population has risen steadily over the last 20 years or so. But there's probably a possible phantom population of this country that may be as many as 10 million.
Oh my,
10 million people who we have no idea that they are here, and the Home Office isn't bothering to keep records. The fact that they just dropped this and didn't bother with it is such an abrogation of their basic responsibility. It's a disgrace.
Your dad worked for the Border Force, wouldn't he? He'd be turning in his grave right now about this news story.
Oh God, he would be, yeah. The only good thing about the migrant crisis is my dad's not around here to comment on it. He would be in a rage about it. He really would.
Oh God, I'm in a rage about it, and hopefully you are as well, filling your dad's shoes. Now let's talk about something else that I'm in a rage about, which is that ridiculous decision taken by the BBC to live broadcast Bob Villan and all the disgusting things he said. Look, I kind of agree with some people on the left who are critiquing, going, they were shouting, death to the IDF, which is talking about soldiers. You can't necessarily equate that to Jewish people in the same way if people say death to Hamas, it doesn't mean death to all Gazans. But at the same time, they would not be so lily-livered about pressing the dump button if it was someone going, Brexit, Brexit. Why on earth was this stuff allowed to be broadcast? And do you think it's right that the BBC's head of music has now stood down? Do more heads need to roll?
Well, yeah, look, by the way, you know that I had a starring role at Glastonbury.
Oh, yeah, you were on stage.
In the build-up to Kneecap, there I was as a typical member of the fascist media. I was rather proud of that moment. But Bob Villan, you're quite right. Well, if he had chanted death, death to the Muslim church, he'd have been off the BBC as fast as hell. They'd have just cut it. They tried to make out that it was technically difficult to stop that live broadcast. No, it wasn't at all. They could have flicked the switch like that. Now, when this happened, this is obviously a profound mistake, a really, really bad balls up by the BBC, for which the Director General, Tim Davie, should take the rap. 580 grand a year, and all he ever does is stumble from one.
And he was there. He was actually at Glastonbury.
Now, what I said the moment this happened, I said, man, I put it on Twitter. I said, this mistake in terms of Bob Villan is so profound that I can assure you at the BBC, deputy heads will roll. And that is exactly what is happening. Old Tim Davie, a man of straw with the spine of a jellyfish, is standing there saying, I think I can ride this one out. I think I'm all right. The chairman, Samir Shah, he says, Tim Davie has our full confidence. Hey, Mr. Shah, like to explain why? We can't see why he's got your full confidence, but who's taking the rap? Not this coward Tim Davie, who should be taking the rap. He's letting Lorna Clark, the head of music, 215 grand a year. She stepped down, but also so have a number of other senior BBC staff being required to step back. Now, so in other words, deputy heads will roll. The top guys at the BBC never take the rap. It's disgusting to behold. This guy, Davie, has gone from disaster to disaster to disaster. Gary Lineker, Hugh Edwards, now this, and yet he's still there. But people lower down the ladder are paying the price. It's revolting. It is revolting to see. Davie, stand up, be a man, take the rap. It's your fault. But even the people who are taking the blame, note the phraseology. They've said this in an official statement. A number of senior executives have been asked to step back in the wake of the Bob Villan incident. Step back.
Yeah.
As opposed to have been fired. No one ever gets sacked from the BBC, no matter what you do. It is a ridiculous organisation. I don't care about it. It can disappear into its rabbit hole of incompetent hopelessness, its anti-Semitic awfulness, as far as I'm concerned. But don't make me pay for it. Why are we paying for this ludicrous outfit? Lorna Clark, the head of music, who's taking the blame, as I say, she said Glastonbury could bring the nation together. That's what the BBC thinks about Glastonbury, that it brings the nation together. No, it doesn't. It just gathers together the 200,000 most irritating middle-class liberal idiots in all the country into one corralled zone.
Yeah, can't there just be a permanent Glastonbury and we can throw all the boat people in there as well and go, there you go, there's your tent encampment, knock yourself out on your halloumi fries and your kombucha.
Yeah, you know how to make the country better, to make Britain a much better place. Have Glastonbury, so next year, although I don't think it's on next year, the year after next when it's next on, let everybody in, the 200,000 middle-class Guardian-reading idiots, anti-Semites. Let them all in, and then lock the doors and don't let them out, ever. That would make Great Britain a much better place, okay?
I love it. I love it.
Kev, I've got all the solutions.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a genius idea. And like I said, it's funny, all these people are like, oh, isn't it so sad, all these boat people, they need their hotels. They can't be living in tents. That's terrible. You just paid 400 quid to live in a tent, you absolute toothpick. I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I'm fully back your idea, but we don't just need to put the lefty liberal elite in Glastonbury and lock it off. Like I said, let's bring out the Bibby Stockholm, park that off the coastline, make another Glastonbury on there, throw the boat people into the mix as well. Have a lovely little jamboree of wokery together. I think that's a perfect solution to all of our problems. Thank you, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. Before I let you go, Kev, what you haven't done? Why are the builders bashing away above your head?
Leaking roof. I've got flat roofs. Don't ever... You got a new house, haven't you? It hasn't got flat roofs.
I tell you what, I have got a new house. I haven't moved into it yet. It does indeed have... I think it's got a flat roof somewhere, but the house I'm currently in has a flat roof, and I've had that. I've had to have a new roof put on. Nightmare.
I'll tell you one thing about builders. So be careful of your flat roof because they do tend to leak. But I think most people who've had builders in will relate to this. Builders turn up And the first thing they do for the first 2 hours is they call you up and they tell you what a terrible job the last set of builders did. Look what they've done. Look what they've done. No. I'll sort this. Oh, look at this. Look at this. So they then fix it up. Then you get another builder in a year's time, and they go, look at what the last guys did. They are all the same. But
builders sound like governments to me. They always blame their predecessor.
Exactly right.
Oh, Kev, always great catching up with you. Good luck with those builders. Go and make them a brew. Right, OK, we're going to take a little break now, but when we're back, we're going to be joined by a former Labour Party advisor to chew over how he thinks the first year of Labour Party governance has gone, because today is the 1-year anniversary of Sir Keir Starmer getting the keys of number 10. Has it been unbridled success? Yeah, I don't think so. We'll be speaking to Mike Buckley after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Now, you might not realise it, but today we celebrate. Or do we celebrate? 1 year of the Labour Party being in power, of course. They had 3 terms out of office and they came back to number 10 with big ideas, big plans, a big programme of policies to do things very differently to their predecessors. But has it all been smooth sailing? Have they really delivered on those pledges? Have they done things that they never even said they would do and failed to do things that they said they would? Let's speak now to Mike Buckley, who's a former Labour Party advisor. OK, so Sir Keir Starmer's first year as Prime Minister, do you think it's gone well?
I think the comms haven't always gone well, but they've certainly begun to achieve lots of things that they set out to achieve. I was just looking through some of the write-ups that journalists and columnists have been putting out over the first year, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. The economy probably hasn't grown as much as they would have liked, but they are putting in the foundations that will lead to a growing economy in the future. Household disposable spending has been a bit up and down. It's going a little bit down on where it was before. Obviously, they're going to want to see that turn around. They have taken significant action on the NHS, which is the key concern of most of the public. Of course, when you look at all the polling and just talk to people on the doorstep, and the record numbers, record finance going into the health service, and they've created 4 million appointments. Well, they created 4 million appointments in the first 9 months. So obviously now we're a bit further on, so it's going to be more than that. And obviously they've just announced a 10-year plan on the NHS, which is going to make a significant difference. And that will mean that people will have 12 hours a day access 6 days a week to GPs and also to other medical services as well, like scans and things like that. That's going to make a huge difference in years to come. There have been other benefits. 100,000 children have been taken out of poverty because of the introduction of free school meals for all kids on universal credit. So that's 500,000 children now getting a free school meal that weren't before. But also 100,000 of those kids are going to get taken out of poverty, which we know is going to make a huge difference to their life chances. And indeed, that will help us all in the future because they'll be more likely to move on and get productive jobs and become productive members of society as well. So it is a mixed bag. I think genuinely one of the problems is I've just told you a bunch of good things that they've done. Most people don't know those things because the comms and the media around this government tends to be very negative. There tends to be a focus on the negative. That's partly a fault, I think, of our media. But it is also a problem of the government's comms operation, and I think they need to shout more about the good things that they're doing rather than let the news be dominated by the bad things. I want to just give you one other example. Last week, they announced an industrial strategy and a trade strategy. There was basically zero comms on those strategies. I don't know so much about the trade strategy, but I know that the industrial strategy was very well regarded by the business leaders who saw it and accepted it and were glad to see the contents of it, because they thought it would help them grow, help them employ people, help them get bigger profits, help them pay bigger wages in the future. That happened with basically zero comment in the press or the media. That is a bad thing, and the government, if they've done this great work, and I think they have done good work in this instance, they should shout about it also that we know. And of course, that would then have a consequent impact, A, on us feeling good about the government that we've got, but also on business sentiment, because they need to know the government's acting in their interest, because it's going to help them invest, help us bring foreign investment into the country as well.
I hear what you have to say. In many respects, I do agree. They're not very good at celebrating some of their wins. And look, I'm going to be pragmatic and honest. All governments have their bad sides, and all governments also have their good sides, and sometimes do something well, even if you're not ideologically aligned to them. But the sort of doomsterism, I think, has had such a profound effect. It sort of, I think, at one point was very much scaring foreign direct investment. We've seen farmers up in arms and protests on our street. We've seen the after effects of people who rioted in Southport. We have seen a huge hit to the economy, applying taxes, national insurance to employers. And now we've seen this massive U-turn on the welfare bill, which was supposed to be giving Rachel Reeves fiscal headroom in order to start bringing down the debt to GDP ratio. She has pledged she's going to stay within the parameters of the OBR. She's going to stay, within a sort of healthy fiscal range, which means in September she's probably going to have to make decisions which are not only going to be unpopular, but are going to hugely harm that growth strategy.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the budget. I mean, certainly she doesn't have much fiscal headroom. She was going to try and fix part of that problem with the welfare bill. I think the problem with the welfare bill is it just seemed to me to be rather ill thought through in terms of the people, the very needy disabled people at the bottom of the pile who would have been affected. And I think crucially, from having spoken to quite a lot of MPs about it, they weren't comfortable with the severely disabled people who would be affected. And they also just felt it was the government had just got this the wrong way round. They'd started this Timms review under Stephen Timms, who's one of the DWP, Department of Work and Pensions ministers, to look into PIP provision, as in personal independence payment provision, in the future over the next 18 months. But they were making the cuts now. And the argument of many of the MPs to the government, well, look, this is the wrong way round. And I think the government finally accepted it. It was a little bit chaotic. It obviously would have been better had the government accepted that argument last week or the week before, would have prevented the scenes that we saw this week. But I think as well, this is, it's a relatively new government. Most of the people in the government hadn't been running the government before, and many of them indeed hadn't been in Parliament last time Labour was in power. So they're obviously learning as they go. Sometimes that does result in mistakes like the ones we saw this week. However, I think they've ended up in the right place with this, because we're a very decent country. And I'm sure everybody watching your programme, listening to your programme, would think, well, people who are genuinely disabled and can't work, as a society, we have a responsibility to support those people, and we wouldn't want to leave those people, in trouble. So I think they've ended up in the right place. But you're right, that does make life difficult for Rachel Reeves on this occasion. But I think actually, oddly enough, with this week, one really encouraging thing I think we've learned about the Chancellor is that the markets and the big business community, they do respect her and they do want her to stay in place. So when it looked for a few hours yesterday as if her job was maybe on the line, the markets didn't like that. You know, they reacted in a way that indicated...
The markets react, though. The markets react to uncertainty, and I get the impression that the markets were reacting to the idea that she might be given the boot in terms of Lord knows what's going to replace her, and potentially kind of spooked that it would be somebody like Angela Rayner who might veer even further to the left. What do you make of the hard left challenge to Sir Keir Starmer in the form of Zara Sultana's new outfit, which apparently Magic Grandpa Jeremy Corbyn is supposed to be joining, although it seems to me that he was on the allotment that day and didn't get the memo she was about to announce this publicly. Is that going to be a threat to Starmer? Is that going to potentially help? It sort of opens the spigot and allows some of that sort of like, you know, opposition to drain out into its own little entity, which might actually free Starmer up to do more of the things that he wants to do.
I mean, it may do. I can't imagine any Labour MPs following Zara Sultana. But anyway, she'd already had the Labour removed a long time ago for rebelling on a vote last year. So she wasn't actually a sitting Labour MP. So she has left the Labour Party, but she was halfway out the door anyway, not through her own choice, I have to say. I mean, I think it's going to be irrelevant. You know, I think this is not a hard left country. The country rejected Jeremy Corbyn and his views, you know, a number of times in the last 10 years. And indeed, the Labour Party was not in good shape when it was run by Jeremy Corbyn. So I'd be very surprised if he or his party, potential party, picked up votes. But actually, one other thing that is true of the hard left, and this was evidenced again, I mean, even today, is the fact that they split, you know, they disagree and they split. And even today, Zara Sultana has said, well, I'm going to co-lead this party with Jeremy Corbyn. Well, apparently this has really annoyed Jeremy Corbyn because he wasn't ready to make an announcement and thinks that she's done the wrong thing by making an announcement that she's there. So I don't even know if this story is true or Zara Sultana just wants it to be true, you know. But I don't think that any party led by her and Jeremy Corbyn will have mass appeal. So I don't think it's going to be a huge electoral threat to the Labour Party. And as you say, I mean, it might, I think it will draw in some left-wing activists, but I don't think it's going to be a major electoral threat or indeed gain much media coverage.
Yeah, you never know. Kind of reflective of Ben Habib setting up his weird little party and everyone going, oh, so is Rupert Lowe going to be leader? And Rupert Lowe's like, nah, I'm not going to be part of that. Maybe like Ben Habib and Zara Sultana should just forge a sort of alliance and have some sort of extreme right, extreme left thing. Who knows? Anyway, Mike, thank you ever so much. You look like you're sitting in the industrial zone of Crystal Maze.
Yeah, I do. I'm just in my office in the meeting room. So there you go.
That's
but no,
cool.
It looks way more exciting than it is.
Yeah, that's sort of like, you know, that is industrial chic. Very nice. OK, thank you ever so much, Mike, for joining us. Actually, no, before we take a break, shall we take a phone call? Because Richard in West Wales is waiting for us on the line. Richard, are you there?
Hello, Alex.
Hey, there you are. Bonada.
How are you today?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I'd like to talk about the Home Office.
Yeah, go on.
They have stated that they have a legal obligation to put migrants up in four-star hotels or now private accommodation.
Mm.
But it strikes me that different governments interpret the ECHR differently.
Yeah.
The Italians, they don't give them money, they don't give them accommodation, they just shove them through to Europe so they can come to us.
Mm.
The French put them up in tents.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a challenge to the Home Office. Show me where it says we should put them in hotels, give them mobile phones, give them money. I don't believe that is in the ECHR. I believe it's probably secure accommodation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. To me, it's absolutely chuffing redunculous that we're allowing people to come into this country, break in illegally, and just, you know, go, oh, well done, here you go. Here's a limitless hotel accommodation. If you're lucky, we'll give you your own house and pocket money. You don't have to worry about a thing. Whilst British people's teeth are falling out and scabs are crusting over and diagnoses not being carried out by the NHS, you're going to jump the queue. You can have all of these privileges. Life couldn't be better for you. If I was sitting there in Eritrea, looking around at my sort of, you know, flea-ridden sandpit hellhole full of murderous brutes, constant conflict, no prospects and women dressed as ghosts, I'd be thinking, yeah, I'm going to get my cash money together and go over to Britain. That seems like a great idea. It is absolutely mad, isn't it?
Exactly. And talk about smashing gangs. What they do, they're advertising us. Come and see us. You know, we'll give you everything. No, I'm sorry. These people, until they're given asylum, they should be kept away from society. You mentioned Glastonbury. But all you say this to the reform councils as well. Go out and rent a field, 10-acre field, miles from anywhere, put house fencing round, give them toilet blocks, and keep them out of the way of the rest of us until they've been given asylum.
Would you want that in West Wales, though? Because West Wales, some would argue, especially that middle bit of Wales, loads of space there. Oh, the Brecon National Park, that could be ample grounds to set up a huge migration camp. Indeed, actually, for a long time, the Welsh Assembly under Labour have wanted Wales to be a haven country. Come one, come all. We're so caring. Refugees are welcome. Would you be happy for the sort of encampment of which you described to be set up where you are?
Exactly. Wait till May the 6th next year, then Labour are history.
But this is the problem, isn't it, Richard? Because, you know, this might sound like a good idea, but nobody wants it in their own backyard, do they?
We've got lots to say. I've got a photo of my phone. I'm a courier.
Yeah.
And I sunset one time, and in the site background, you can see these sort of Nissan hut type things built with grease blocks. And it's a lovely place. It's now a little industrial estate. People... key cutters, picture framers. There's a guy with built his own gym. This was built in the early 40s in an Italian prisoner of war camp. There are places around, you know, you could do that, and then when we've got rid of the asylum seekers, then let them out as little units for people. There's lots of things we can do that don't involve taking rented accommodation from young British people who, well, they could go on the streets.
Yeah. Do you know, Richard, I quite like your proposal there. I might make a few calls. Let's see what we can do. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr to Richard in West Wales. We're going to take a short break now, but from West Wales we're going to focus our attentions to Manchester because the beginning of a hugely historic tour is going to be underway tonight. It is the first night of the Oasis reunion tour in Cardiff. We're going to be discussing that after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show now. The long-awaited Oasis reunion tour finally gets underway tonight, starting with 2 nights at Cardiff's Principality Stadium on Friday and Saturday. The legendary brothers will also be playing 7 nights in London, 5 in Manchester and 3 in Edinburgh, and a partridge in a pear tree. Business groups are saying the tour is going to be giving a huge economic boost to the economy between July and August due to fans spending cash money on merchandise, travel and hospitality. Let's speak now to Sasha Lord, chair of the NTIA, which is the Nighttime Industry Association, and co-creator of Parklife, welcome to the show, Sasha. Now, I don't give a hoot about Oasis. I never liked them. I thought they were overrated. I'd rather drown myself in urine than go and watch that show, which often involves people getting drowned in urine, as far as I understand. But loads of people out there think this is monumental. This is a brilliant moment of Britpop, Cool Britannia to come back. Why is stuff like this so important?
Well, I think you're in the minority on this one. I think there's huge support out there for them. I agree, being doused in urine's not the best, Alex. But look, this is a win-win-win. It's a win for music, for UK music, one of our biggest exports. It's a win for the fans, hundreds of thousands of fans. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. This is a huge win for much-needed businesses, restaurants, bars, taxis. Hotels in Manchester, you cannot get a hotel room next weekend. It is impossible. So there's a huge bounce on this. And I have to say, I think the one thing that everybody's forgotten as well is their boy's mum, Peggy, who's getting on a bit now. How proud will she be tonight to see her boys walk back on stage together? So it's a huge moment. It's very, very exciting.
I mean, proud Peggy might be proud as punch, but are there going to be punches? Because these two have a bit of a track record of having a Barney falling out very quickly. There's a lot of dates they've got to do. They're getting a bit older. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of opportunity to, you know, start tearing strips off one another. How much of a disaster would it be if after night 1, 2 or 3, the Gallagher brothers have one of their usual massive spats and the rest of it has to be cancelled?
Well, it would be catastrophic, wouldn't it? But I think on that, two things. Firstly, they've both grown up. And secondly, the money involved in this is eye-watering. I have seen some of the monies involved. And they're not going to fall out over this, trust me. I mean, they're set for life anyway, but this is looking after their generation after generation after generation.
How much are we talking about?
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions! Blimmin'
Yes.
heck.
You have to think about it, Alex. It's not just ticket sales. They'll be getting a percentage of bar sales, of merchandise sales. There might be new music coming out. It is phenomenal. And then all the new people who were never there for original Oasis will be buying all the old albums. So I would not be surprised if we see some of their old albums charting in the top 10 again next week. You know, this is a big cash cow for them.
But what about the fans here? Because there's been a lot of criticism of the way ticket sales and ticket resales have happened, with some ticket agencies frankly taking the proverbial when it comes to this, that, you know, fans have been essentially extorted to go and have the opportunity to go and see the brothers reunited.
I agree, Alex. I was one of those critics. You know, how poor was it to think that you were getting up early on that Saturday morning to queue to buy your ticket for 135 quid, only to queue for 3 hours and then find out at the end, actually, you can have your ticket, but it's now £350. No warning, no explanation. And it was naughty, wasn't it? And I think that's now put forward this whole debate about, they call it dynamic ticketing. It's a similar principle as EasyJet or Ryanair. You know, the first tickets are the cheapest, then it gets more and more expensive. I think it's wrong. I really do. I believe that you set your stall out at the beginning. That's your ticket price. Yes, it might be 2-3 hours to queue, but you know what you're paying. It was wrong what happened.
I totally agree. I wouldn't pay 300 Brazilian pounds to go and see anything, frankly, let alone Oasis. But about time we held some of these extorting companies to task. Sasha Lord, thank you ever so much for joining me today. Right. Oh, OK. Apparently there's a competition I've got to tell you about. I've talked to you about this before because it is your opportunity to win tickets, a pair of Oasis tickets for free. You don't have to wait 3 hours and pay a gazillion pounds. No. We're handing them out to you. And this is the opportunity to go and see them in their place of birth at an iconic concert in Manchester, as well as sending you to that brilliant historic gig. We're also going to put you up in a hotel and give you £5,000. Here's how to enter.
On iArcade, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for the chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5,000 spending money. Text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. free to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. Good luck, yeah? Sorted.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This.
Hello, welcome back to the show. It is the final segment, which means it's time to share and care with you guys. Let's do some messages first. Barry in Morecambe says it'd be interesting to see how much these left-wing lawyers care about the illegal immigrants if the legal aid was stopped. There are plenty of people out there making an absolute packet, because what really annoys me is when these people challenge their deportation orders and have an appeal not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times, it is the taxpayer who's both paying to defend the government and the taxpayer who's paying the immigration lawyer defending the deportee. Ridiculous. Jane says about Oasis, I agree with you, Alex. They're crap. Yes, they are, because everybody knows there's only one band in Manchester who changed the course of music history, who are the best band ever on earth, and that band is called James. They're my favourite band and they're brilliant. Now, talking about the excellence that is James, another James has been fielding your calls and vetting you and making sure you're balmy enough to be patched through to the studio. So let's speak to some of you now. This is Steve in Scunthorpe. Hello there, Steve.
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm all right, my love. How are you?
2 quick things. Can I form the straight party? And the other thing is, if Nigel Farage got in and he stopped any further people coming in, well, what are you going to do with the other ones? Well, he's stopping the boat people. If we got somebody else in, they just keep on coming.
First of all, Steve, you can form any party that you like. I think, you sort of pay your money, you register, you get a party secretary, all the rest of it, and you don't nick somebody else's names, and off you go to the ballot box. So good luck with the straight party. In terms of, you're right, Nigel is the only person who really says he's got a cogent plan to actually stop the boats, which involves leaving the ECHR and towing vessels back to France. Everyone else that we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to create some mad system in Rwanda. No, why not just take the boats back to France? I kind of think it seems simple, but perhaps it is too simple. Perhaps it's too good to be true.
The thing I phoned him for was your expert on the Labour Party. He said that, what's his name? Starmer. That's right, Starmer. Sorry, I forgot his name.
We'd all like to forget he exists, but sadly he is still our Prime Minister.
He said he got more votes than Corbyn.
He did, yeah. No, he didn't. No, he got less. You're right. He got fewer.
He got fewer votes than Corbyn. So, completely. And he went on about school meals and that. Oh, what a good thing. Well, who's paying for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. They see the Labour Party are very good at paying for stuff via us and not very good at making sure that the economy actually grows. And this is going to be the big challenge for Rachel Reeves, isn't it, come September? If she was sitting on the green benches sobbing the other day, I'd love to see the state of her face when the public reacts to the sort of measures she may have to take in the next budget.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think he needs to get his facts right. And I mean, he's supposed to be an expert. He's not sort of Joe Public like me. He's
a former Labour Party advisor, so he's got some skin in the game. He knows the operators involved. He knows their politics. He shares those politics, which is why we have him on for his insight. But that's what we do it for. All views are welcome here. Steve in Scunthorpe, thank you ever so much for your views. Let's speak now to Anne, who's in Sussex. Hello there, Anne.
Hello. Thanks for having me on. I was just ringing about the issues with the Home Office, with London as a whole, and with many government departments that are not working properly. And one of the issues for me is this diversity that came in over the last few years.
Ah, yes.
And in many companies, it isn't employing the people with the skills for the job. It's employing people that we tick that box, we've got the right gender or the right race or whatever, and not about competence. And I can't be the only one who, whenever I ring an organisation or a government department or the NHS, I can't understand always what the people are saying, because unlike Canada, people do not have to speak the language clearly. You can't be a citizen until you've learnt, I don't know if it's French for Quebec or whatever.
Quebecois is the language. It's a weird form of French, that. I'm a fluent French speaker, and I once met a Quebecois, and I couldn't understand a word they were saying. It's like some sort of French-Welsh thing.
Well, it really is a big problem here, and I, like many of my generation, and what happens is, of course, as you get older, your hearing fails, you can't understand, and that's the other issue about the fact that we need more immigrants because we haven't got the population. If I'm just digress slightly, one is we think that when you're stuck in a care home and you're not seeing anybody, and the only member of staff you see doesn't really speak your language, what kind of life is that? And that is appalling. And that we've had 10 million abortions in this country. Birth rate is too low, so we've got to take people from other countries. I'm all for asylum and the fact that we are very good at looking after vulnerable people. Now we don't know who is in this country and who isn't.
Oh, no, I totally agree. It's interesting you bringing up the abortions thing. We were going to talk about it today because Lily Allen's done some sort of podcast where she's singing a merry little song bragging about having had 5 of them. I'm like, mate, I'd keep that to yourself if I was you. I don't think many people are sitting there doing the round of applause and, toasting you for confessing to that. Anne from Sussex, thank you ever so much for your call. Now, let's speak to Nigel, who's in London. Good afternoon, Nigel.
Good afternoon, Alex. I trust that you're well in Talk Towers. I
am well in Talk Towers today. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Yes, I'm pretty good, enjoying the wonderful sunshine. If I hear anyone say to me it's too hot, I'm going to just be very upset with them.
It's nice today. It was a bit too hot the other day, though, wasn't it? I mean, it's all right if you're sitting on a beach in 35 degrees, but when you're in central London and you've got all the traffic fumes and it's just clammy and gross.
Hotter the better. It'll be freezing cold in a few weeks' time. So hot.
That's true. We do moan about weather too much, don't we? Considering,
really
you know,
do.
it's always too hot, too cold, too wet, not wet enough, can't put our sprinklers on, too much rain, now it's flooding. I mean, we're just never happy, are we, on our little island when it comes to the weather?
I agree with you. Now, my take on Nigel Farage and reform, whilst I think he's a formidable opponent, I don't think he will ever form a government as Nigel Farage with reform alone, because to suddenly turn around 5 seats into 350 would be momentous. I think as a coalition, credible, yes.
So in terms of, so it's not about Nigel personally, it's about the sort of probability of this happening. It's sort of, you know, how do you go from having just 5 MPs to all of a sudden, ta-da, you've got a majority in Parliament, that such things just don't happen in politics?
No, I don't think they do. I think that I think there's a chance if the Conservatives are smart and Kemi Badenoch wakes up from her slumber. Or decides
Is that what you'd want? Is that what you'd want to see, a sort of Reform Conservative coalition where you've got the sort of, you know, charisma and energy and the change factor of Reform UK, but perhaps some of the ministerial experience that the Conservatives could bring?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, if you look at PMQs, this week's PMQs was, I think, her best ever PMQs. Normally, she's just, I think, slightly redundant. I'm sorry to say that she doesn't have much energy, enthusiasm or charisma. When you think that every Wednesday you have an opportunity to fire arrows across the dispatch box and wound your opponent, she never takes the opportunity.
Yeah, do you know, but it's more than just about performance at PMQs, isn't it? It's about having policies. It's about people trusting you to actually deliver on what you pledge. And I wonder if in 4 years' time, collective amnesia will be at such a height that people trust the Conservatives again to stop the boats, or whether they will remember what happened for the past 3 terms of a Conservative government, that they talk the talk, but they never walked the walk.
Well, look, stop the boat. It's a wonderful 3-word liner from politicians. But if you look back at the Second World War, the Home Guard stopped the SS, the Luftwaffe, and the Germans arriving here from as nearby as Jersey. Yet this government and the previous government can't stop people coming on rubber dinghies. It's pathetic.
Pathetic it is indeed. And then we find out, of course, the Home Office don't even know people who've outstayed their visas legally. That was Nigel in London. Thank you ever so much. Oh, look at the little alien that's just crawled into the studio. It's Mr. Ian Collins. Hello.
I was trying to think of an alien response then, but I can't really think of one. Do you remember?
That was my alien impression. I don't know what that was.
The kind of... no, that was Close Encounters, wasn't it?
Well, I've never seen Close Encounters.
Or was that E.T.?
I think that isn't E.T. That might be Close Encounters, that sort of little riff.
Yeah.
It's Close Encounters, says Sam.
Thank you.
Well,
there's Sam. Yeah, it's Close Encounters,
yeah. Have you noticed that the Labour Party backs against the ropes? They've got out, the Conservative Party used to do this during COVID. They get out their policy scattergun machine. Yes. And all of a sudden, as soon as Boris Johnson looks unpopular, he's like, we're going to do a Rwanda plan, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Headlines on the front pages, we're going to distract you all with these shiny new policies over here.
All of that.
They've done that today, haven't they, the Labour Party? Because we've got that NHS app, we've got the face detection and shoplifting and community policing.
Detection.
We've got loads of stuff going on. I can't
Free
remember
Labrador for everybody.
Yeah, exactly, all of that.
It's all there. I mean, look, to me, the totemic thing is the whole lockdown of COVID told us at that very moment that if a government wants to do something so big, which in any other walk of life they'd have gone, no, it's impossible. We know things can be done if they really want to. You can lock an entire country down.
Yeah.